and give staff direction on priorities for the coming fiscal year. There will be public comment in item 5. We're going to hear some reports from city staff first. And interpretation services are available. Nicholas, could you come forward and just explain the interpretation process? Nicholas?
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and Honorable City Council and all staff and members of the public. My name is Nicolas Laskiewicz. I will be functioning as an interpreter into the Spanish language. Miembros del público, las instrucciones para participar en la reunión de hoy se pueden encontrar en el orden del día que ya está publicado y estas instrucciones dan información de cómo presentar comentarios tanto por escrito como por Zoom. Y a los miembros del público también se les proporcionará interpretación en vivo de toda esta reunión en español. Para acceder al servicio de interpretación en vivo por Zoom, ya sea con una computadora o una portátil, haga clic en el icono del globo terráqueo, es decir, un mundo, y seleccione el idioma español. Si usted está usando un teléfono inteligente o una tableta, busque el menú de 3 puntos y seleccione interpretación. Luego seleccione el idioma español y por último haga clic en Done o Listo para poder acceder a la interpretación en vivo. Muchas gracias. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicholas. I'll rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. And could I please have a roll call?
Councilmember Brownstone.
Here. Councilmember
Johnson.
Here.
Councilmember Nagengast.
Here.
Vice Mayor Penrose.
Here.
Mayor Ruddick. We have a quorum.
So I think we've covered the introduction so far. So I think we can move on to item 3, which is City Council Rules of Decorum Overview.
Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, members of council, Denise Bazzano, Interim City Attorney. I'm going to be presenting on the City Council Rules of Procedure and Decorum, which were included as part of the package today. So if the public is interested, they can review them as well. City Manager will be joining me if he feels he wants to input anything in the discussion. So the Council Rules of Procedure and Decorum were first adopted on May 17th, 2016. They've been revised a few times since then, which is very normal. And they generally establish rules and procedures for the council for how the meetings are conducted and the duties of the council members and mayor as their role as officials for the city. The rules also govern topics such as council communications, as well as ceremonial matters. So they're very helpful to the council and to the public understanding how meetings are conducted and what council members' duties are as they perform those duties for the city. In preparing for today's priority session, we thought it would be helpful to just go over some of the more relevant topics that are described, or the duties that are described in the Council Rules of Procedure and Decorum that might be relevant to today's discussion. Oops. Sorry. Nope. It's going the wrong way. There we go. So, some of the relevant topics we pulled out were to put constituents foremost at all times. You're going to be hearing from the public, and that's part of the priority setting. public comment period, and that is something we wanted to call out. Also, to treat each other, staff, and members of the public with dignity, courtesy, and respect, to be attentive to others, to encourage diverse viewpoints and deliberations while being mindful, not to prolong discourse or block consensus, to agree to respectfully disagree. Sometimes topics today will be very passionate discussions about particular items, and that's normal, but it's important to remember that everybody has an opinion, and sometimes we just have to agree to disagree. Keeping comments clear, concise, and that's supposed to be on topic, not no topic, and presenting problems in a way that promotes discussion and resolution. So part of the goals of today is to build consensus around potential priorities, existing priorities, future priorities, and to do that, we need to promote discussion so that we can build that consensus where possible. The mayor has special duties as described in the council rules of procedure and decorum. The mayor as presiding officer is tasked with maintaining decorum, keeping council member questions relevant to the matter being considered, calling a brief recess if necessary. If things get too heated, the mayor might call a recess, or if the meeting is disrupted, there might be a recess in order to regain control of the meeting. Ensuring that each member of the council is provided an opportunity to express their views on an item of business, so making sure that everybody has an opportunity to speak that wants to speak, that they've been heard, and that they've expressed their views. So again, things to keep in mind today, there's the letter of the rules, right? The actual requirements in the rules of procedure, but then also keeping in mind the spirit by which those the rules of procedure were adopted. They were meant to be a tool to facilitate and encourage a respectful and efficient decision-making process, and that's why they are so helpful to the council. But also remembering that it is important to build a consensus today. So hearing what everybody has to say and being respectful of what they are saying.
And I'll just add, part of the reason we want to share this today is obviously this is an important meeting and there are really important decisions to be made today, but we have 2 more meetings in the coming week that have items on them that have very differing views within the community and sometimes among the council. And I would say over the last several months, and this isn't the council, this is staff, this is the community as well, some of these rules of decorum seem to have gotten a little bit lost, and I'll just give a few examples. For instance, when we have the timer for public comment and people start to go long, the mayor often has to remind the public that they're going long, and unfortunately, sometimes that is not respected. And, we're not in the business of going and taking mics away or turning people off, but we would really ask the public to respect that. Additionally, we've had to remind the public that, and it's in our rules of decorum, that there shouldn't be clapping, cheering, booing, those types of audience reactions to things that staff are saying, things that the council are saying, or things that are being said in public comment. And sometimes the mayor has to remind the community of that, and often that isn't respected. So it's a full circle thing here that all of us need to work together to respect the importance of these public meetings and to respect each other and to try to keep things civil and respectful throughout the process. We're in a world today where that is not the popular opinion, divisiveness, not really respecting each other's opinions. That's the world that we're in, and I think our community is better than that. And I hope that over the next several meetings we can see all of us working together to be respectful and thoughtful and be able to share differing opinions, but in a respectful way. And by doing so, I think that brings confidence to the process, confidence to the decisions that are being made, and respect to those that want to participate. So, thank you.
It's a public forum, but not the Roman Colosseum. Okay. So we can move on to item 4, which is staff updates.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We will try to move through these updates quickly. These updates mostly cover items that were part of the agenda packet. We know that the packet has only been out for a couple of days, and so not everybody may have been able to see it. So we'll do quick overviews for everybody, but we will try to keep this portion of the meeting very short. So we're going to talk just a little bit about accomplishments. It sets the context for workload and the things that we're doing as a city. Our Admin Service Director, Kenneth Stiles, will give a very quick budget update. He provided an overview at our last meeting, so this is just a quick recap on items that are relevant to today's discussion. We'll have a discussion about our existing projects and things that are already on the horizon. And then our Communications Program Manager, Mario C. Alvarado, will provide just a very quick overview of the listening sessions, which are a very, very important part of this process as well. So to start, we'll go to accomplishments, and Karen Decker, our interim deputy city manager, will be sharing a brief statement about this fiscal year so far. Karen.
Great, thank you, Matthew. And good afternoon, Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council, and community and staff. I'd like to first just acknowledge that we as a city have been facing significant challenges in the last couple of years. We've been working through a structural deficit. We've had a staggering level of staff turnover in the last year. And despite working within these constraints, we have incredibly hardworking and dedicated staff, some of who are in the audience, some who are tuning in online. And the slide that you see before you is just a snapshot of some of the accomplishments that staff have been working in lockstep with council, and this is just in the first 9 months of this year. We've made concerted efforts to cut costs and increase revenue. We've made significant improvement on our ongoing structural deficit, and we fully funded reserves at the city's 50% policy level. We saw the opening of a brand new neighborhood, Stone Pine Cove, that brought 46 new units of affordable housing. We secured a $500,000 grant from the Coastal Commission to initiate the implementation of our local coastal land use plan. We adopted a new commercial downtown vitality ordinance, launched the city's first GIS system and public map viewer. This provides easier access to the community so they can see information on parcels and zoning and land use. We implemented an online permitting system. We also provided a lot of new fun recreational classes and opportunities. We have a new beach volleyball league. We have Tai Chi now. We have a really popular country line dancing class, Tiny Toddlers Open Gym. We replaced and improved asphalt surfaces that were very heavily used along portions of the coastal trail, particularly near Poplar Beach. We did extensive research on our rental registry and stabilization programs. We opened Carter Park. It's now a state-of-the-art amphitheater, and it is so fun to see people's reactions who haven't seen the upgrades, who see it for the first time, and it's garnering a lot of interest in rentals and potential community events there. So again, this is just a snapshot. You could see a more comprehensive list in attachment 1 of the staff report. I'm going to turn to my colleague Ken to provide a budget update.
Very good afternoon, Madam Mayor, Council, members of the public. So I'm just here to present a very quick budget overview of what it's looking like this year and potentially next year. At the last council meeting, I presented the media review. So there's no new information here. So this is going to be a very high level just to help frame us going for priority setting. So starting with this year, this slide is showing our balances, and the table on the left kind of lays them out. That first column under the adopted budget is what we adopted back in June of last year. We were anticipating at the end of this year, reserves would be at 36% of operating expenditures, which is that bottom row. In the second column is the revised budget that was approved at the last council meeting. So at a high level, we saw a lot of gains in our revenues, mostly from TOT. We did not adjust expenditures, not much. So from there, we were able to put some funds away into our reserves. So our reserves, we were able to put fully fund our reserves up to 50%, which is per our reserve policy, which is an achievement for the city. As of right now, it's looking like at the end of this fiscal year on June 30th, we'll have about 12 million in reserves and about 1.6 in unassigned. Next slide, please. Okay. So next year, a deficit is still very likely. Our first draft is showing a deficit of about 1.8 million. We still have a lot of work to do, so that number will change, but it does give us an idea of what we're looking at. It's a marked improvement from prior years, but we still have a way to go. So what's built into this number? How do we forecast? We take a very conservative approach, low and slow growth with our revenues, but we do take into consideration things that we know or anticipate will happen. One of the things is the vehicle in lieu fees. This is a complicated revenue stream that the cities of San Mateo County argue with the state of California about. We built in that we probably won't get the portion that is in dispute. For us right now, it's up to about $700K. It's a significant amount of change. We're still fighting for that, but for conservative approach purposes, we assume that we won't get it next year. But again, the city and the other cities of San Mateo County are still fighting for these monies. Another thing that is built into the forecast is losing our golf fees. This is a revenue stream that went into effect back in the 90s and is expiring in September. What's also included is an assumption that we're going to be fully staffed at the current structure, but we're initiating an organizational study that may change things. So it's just built in as a placeholder, but it may change. So as I mentioned, while the deficit may be in the $1.8 million area, we do have some unassigned funds from this year that we're expecting that may help us float through next year as we continue to keep chipping away at this.
Thank you, Ken. All right. The next thing we want to talk about, again, is in the packet, but we just want to briefly go over this, and we may want to have a deeper discussion when we get to the priority setting portion of the meeting. It's really just to help the council and the community see the current workload that is going on within the city and the projects that we're currently working on, as well as potential projects we've already identified either through mandates or things that we're hearing may be coming through applications and other things that we've been talking about over the last several months. So the first thing I want to do, if council has the documents in front of them, community, if you're interested, on the table over here, there is attachment 3 and attachment 4. They were part of the packet. I first want to point out a couple of changes to this version versus the one that was published with the packet. There were a couple of oversights on my behalf, and I apologize, on attachment 3. So for current projects, the 555 Kelly Affordable Housing Project was not included on that list. It's something we're dealing with this year. We don't know what it looks like in the future year. It should have been included on that list, so it's been added here now, and I apologize for that. And then there are 3 more items on the programs and projects, an expanded MOU with Cabrillo Unified School District and Boys and Girls Club for facilities use, something we've been actively working on, and it is something that's been prioritized by our Recreation Commission. I wanted to make sure that was pointed out here. Any of the items on this list with an asterisk are part of their priority setting that they've done in their meetings. Recreation partnerships and event sponsorships and fundraising efforts are also a priority for the Parks and Rec Commission and something that staff has been working on, especially with the launch of Carter Park. And for those of you who enjoy the volleyball courts that we put up seasonally at Poplar Beach, there's a desire to expand that, and that's something we've been working on as well, and is a priority of the Parks and Rec Commission. On attachment 4, potential projects, 4 new items have been added from that priority setting. The fire pits at Poplar Beach, if you recall, we had a young Eagle Scout project. She worked with a local contractor and built big concrete fire pits that were piloted at Poplar Beach last year and were really successful. Those had to be removed because of the limitations on how long the permit would allow them to be there. And as a potential project, we would want to look at long-term permitting and putting them out there more permanently. And that's a priority for our Parks and Rec Commission. exploring more recreational opportunities at the Johnston House property, expanding the offerings at the Summer's End Music Festival, and film location marketing and resources. We had a lot of success with the filming of a feature film here earlier this year, and something that as staff has thought about as a potential new item would be to go a little bit deeper and make ourselves more of a destination for that. So those have been added to those lists compared to what was posted on the agenda. Really what the purpose of these documents is, again, is to just give a snapshot of the special projects that staff are looking at and dealing with day to day. Between the two lists, there's over 70 projects. And these are beyond the routine day-to-day work that our staff handle. So whether it's receiving visitors to City Hall and providing customer service, processing, planning and building applications, doing inspections of existing projects, both private and public, receiving code enforcement complaints and going out and responding to those. The incredible amount of maintenance work that's required for all of our facilities that our Parks and Rec, or our Public Works maintenance team works on every single day. And all the different tasks that our staff are dealing with on an administrative side every single day, those all happen, and then we have these special projects that ebb and flow and change from day to day. Some of these are state or federal mandates. Some of these are just important things to the community. And I think the context is really important because, as Karen mentioned, we've had a challenging couple of years. We've had 40% of our staff turnover in the last 2 years. The 5 years prior to that, we had almost no turnover. So that creates problems with institutional knowledge, getting people trained, getting people up to speed, shifting responsibilities. And we are still currently sitting at about 30% vacancy among our staff. So everyone that is coming to work every day is taking on more work, responsibilities that are outside of their normal day-to-day. And really, I would say staff are really strapped right now. And that's based on these lists and the day-to-day work. And so we want to be very thoughtful today as we go through this process that we are prioritizing the most important things, that as we add new items, we recognize where they can fall in our own capacity as a community, as a staff, both human resources, but also financially. So I'm happy to take any questions on this, but I just wanted to provide that context before we move forward today.
Is that your full report?
On that item, yes.
Okay. So that covers the staff report plus attachments 1 through 4?
Exactly. Well, we have one more item, which is a quick summary on the listening sessions from our communications program manager.
Okay. Any questions from council members so far on what you've heard? Okay, I would move on to the next step then.
Mario Say, thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, community members, and staff. The process to gather feedback through the listening sessions started with 2 community listening sessions in English and Spanish and 1 Faith Leaders event. We also opened a website submission form and provided an email address so that the community could submit feedback. These various channels provided opportunities to submit thoughts, ideas, and proposals for what our community considers to be priorities to focus in the upcoming fiscal year. The feedback shared ranged from topics like housing, affordability, public safety, economic vitality and downtown activity, infrastructure and public works, community recreation facilities, transportation access, government transparency and accountability, among others. The purpose of today's exercise is to help our City Council be informed about the needs of the community as decisions are made in budget allocations for the next fiscal year. We want to thank especially the community members for your participation and your interest in this process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from council members on that report? Okay, I think we can move to public comment. So, do we have speaker slips? Okay. So we have a lot of slips here, and I'm guessing there are going to be people online who want to comment as well. So I'm going to limit comment to 2 minutes. Yes. Okay, this first speaker is Emily Den Herder. I can't hear you. Oh, she's on her way. Okay, well, I'll set that aside for now. Ari Gupta and Kiran Steinmiller. Ari Gupta, Kiran Steinmiller, if you could come to the podium to
I
speak.
think she's grabbing her and then coming.
My name is Kieran. I want a pool because I can teach my baby brother how to swim and I can go and do laps.
And Kieran, what's your favorite thing to do on the coast side?
Boogie board.
And what makes it safe for you to be able to do that?
Swim.
All right, so I'm Anjali Gupta. I live in Alsace-Lorraine, and I'm mom to 2 boys, 2 and 5. You just met my older one. And living here, my two biggest fears are the things that define our geography, Highway 1 and our oceans. In this coastal community, swimming is not a luxury. It's a survival skill, and we have a duty of care to make swimming accessible to everyone. I'm here today, even though a pool is not on the agenda, because we have a rare time-bound opportunity that's coming up this year. The high school pool is being rebuilt, and while it hasn't come to council yet, we'll have a narrow window to act before construction locks us into the same situation with our pool for the next however many decades. I'm here to say that I really believe we need a second warmer community pool for swim instruction, family recreation, and senior activities. So Paul and Matthew, I want to thank you very, very much for your transparency regarding the city's budget and the concerns about risks. I absolutely hear you. And so today, as you set your priorities, what I'm asking you for is not a check. It is endorsement. So I'm really hoping that you'll endorse a pool, that you will support community efforts to have one. And when you endorse, you're making 3 powerful statements. Number 1, you're saying safety is a priority. You agree that swimming is an essential life skill. Number 2, you're expressing openness and creativity to community-based solutions, that you support partnerships and new business models to get this moving. 3, inclusion. You recognize that our current system leaves people behind, from families who can't afford private lessons to seniors who
Please
need,
wrap up.
yes, low-impact exercise. So right now, only a fraction of our kids are ocean ready. And when this opportunity comes up, I'm just asking you,
Thank you.
for your endorsement.
Thank
you.
The next speaker is Chad Hooker.
Hi, I'll try to make this fast. On February 17th, I think it was, at the council meeting, you approved this, in concept, the banner program for Main Street. And I just want to say that went straight back to staff, and in 3 weeks, it came before us at AAC with a great presentation. No subcontractors, no outside contracts, no money spent. They did a great job, and we were able to move forward on this. I would encourage that you stay with that program. I'm here to talk about 2 other things. One is the parklet next to City Hall. Let's keep in mind that generally, when you don't have any money, you're looking for low-hanging fruit. That is on land that you own. The survey has been completed. The bell has been donated. The design has been done for free. All these things for free. And, well, the survey, I guess, was part of the solar. And the guy Steve Kikuchi, has volunteered to do the working drawings for the balance of this design so that it can go out to bid. But he was only interested in doing that if there's some commitment from council that this will move forward rather than hit another desk in City Hall and sort of camp out there for another few years. So that's a pretty easy thing to do. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about is this settlement with the other 2 parties in the sanitary district. I would encourage this council as a body and the individuals on this council who work with the sewer authority, or work, I guess, as members of it, to work very hard to get a combined sewer and water authority for the whole coast. This is the time to make a move on this. Get the attorneys talking to each other rather than fighting with each other. Try to put this together. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad. The next speaker is Alexandria Johnson, followed by Livia Priestley, or Layuba Priestley, sorry.
Hi, my name is Alex Johnson. This is my son, Douglas.
Hi, my name is Douglas. This week at swim, I earned my orange ribbon. I would like the city to have a community pool so I can swim with my friends.
Thank you, Douglas. And for Douglas to get his orange ribbon this week, he had to do something he thought was really scary. He had to swim the whole pool underwater, no fins, not coming up for air. And for months, he worked on it, and we told him, this is something your body can do. It's your brain and your fear getting in the way. And I know the opportunity for a community pool is coming up. And today, you're going to hear a lot of us asking the city to prioritize this for our community. Just a second, buddy. And you likely know the statistics. They're worth repeating, though. Public pools have been in decline since desegregation, and that has made swim safety an issue of the haves and have-nots. Drowning is the leading cause of death for children 4 and under. Swim lessons reduce drowning risk by 88%. And drownings happen when there's not safe places to swim. Our ocean is not a safe place to swim. And from what I can tell, I think at least 3 drownings on the coast over the past year. We are going to be in a very lucky opportunity to fix this issue. And I am asking the city to prioritize their time and energy by working with the county and the school district when this opportunity comes up. Hold on, buddy. Douglas's swim teacher taught him the trick to swimming across the pool underwater. You take a deep breath and you look down, you don't look up as you're swimming across. And today I feel like we are standing at the edge of the pool for the coast side. And I hope we can take that deep breath, focus on what's in front of us, and jump in. Thank you in advance for role modeling, problem solving, and bravery for our community.
Thank you. The next speaker is Layuba Priestley, followed by Timothy Pond. Excuse me, Layuba. Since we've heard from 2 pool people already, if you could just try to keep your comments brief. Thank you.
Where do you swim?
Half Moon Bay High.
On the mini maps. Do you like swimming there?
Yes.
Are you going to continue swimming there?
Yes.
What's the water like?
Cold. Too cold when I am getting in.
Emma, where do you swim?
Wapiti Marine.
Where are you going to swim after that?
I forgot.
The water's a little too cold for the kids at Half Moon Bay High. Communities are built on families who stay and grow for several generations. A pool just isn't an amenity. It would be an investment for our community. For our youngest members, it would be an investment. It's about reinforcing life-saving skills that they have learned at La Petite Baleine. For our older members, it's about mobility and connection and having a place to go. When the water is too cold, these things are not an option for us. When it's too windy, it's not an option for us. We cannot do it. For teenagers and young adults, it's a place to reinforce those skills and to learn skills like lifeguarding and instruction to keep the jobs here, to prevent people from leaving.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Timothy Pond, followed by Eric DeBode.
Good afternoon. My name is Tim Pond. I live in Alsace, Lorraine. About 2 months ago, the City Council allocated 17 Measure D units for residential units out to a project which has no planning approval, and it's not going to be built to 2030, at least. They made the finding that no development would be affected by this, or developers would not be affected by this, to allocate over 5. I believe this is what it was. I have people that had Measure Ds that were denied, and therefore that effect is real right now. So the finding is basically proven false, that the finding is these people were denied their right to build. So now City Council said, well, we're probably going to give them away in August. But the obfuscation and the confusion around Measure D for people is so great that that's a primary driver of people not getting a Measure D. They come to me in the middle of the year and say, when am I going to apply? And I say, in January. So I know a lot of people don't understand this, but it's necessary to explain to people. People in this community don't know about how to go about development. They don't know about Measure D. People on the City Council, I don't think, are fully aware of how the whole thing works. The applications have to be done by January 1st. I had somebody call me on February 2nd and say, can I make an application? And I said, no, you can't. So anyway, thank you. I won't go over that.
Thank you, Tim. Eric DeBode, followed by Harvey Rarbach.
Good afternoon, Council. Quick question. Is there a way to email comments for the record at this meeting? Who do we email? Okay, thank you. Good, because I prepared something and it's way too long. Thank you so much for having this listening session. I'll be brief. I want to support the rental registry and the attempts to create a policy around rent control. I think it's critical to collect data about our rental inventory and to support education for renters about their rights and responsibilities, and to create a feedback loop, especially for vulnerable renters and subletters, so that they are aware of their rights. Housing is a primary need. On that same note, secondly, I want to express my support for 555 Kelly and urge you to move forward with the approvals and construction of that project. And I want to commend you on Stone Pine. It's just so fantastic to see it filling up, and thank you for all your efforts to make that a reality. So the reason I wanted to come today was to speak about the Hopeful Horizons program that the county is requesting cities look at, and I know you discussed it at the last city council meeting. I'll email you this more lengthy analysis, but essentially what I want to say is I want to urge you strongly to go with what is working. And I know Anita Reese was here from PRC last week to speak about some of their efforts. They do a lot of the case management on the coast side with the homeless community. There's a program called IRF, which is the Encampment Resolution Funding, and it supports a specific case manager who works with Abundant Grace and the homeless community, and we have successfully assisted 8 people getting into housing just this past year. It's been wildly successful when you compare it to some of the other housing efforts that we've been doing. So what I urge is that you work with us, with PRC, Coastside Hope, maybe someone from city staff like Jalissa or someone you'd like to appoint, and let's really focus on this issue. I've been down along the creek plenty times.
Can you wrap up, please?
Yeah. There's nobody on the creek from Tom and Pete's all the way up towards Burger King. Right now, there's a handful of people behind Safeway, but that's it. I would count 4 people. That's all. Thank you very much. We can do this.
Thank you. Harvey, followed by Amber Snow. Or Stowe. Oops.
I have 3 priorities which I'd like to bring to the attention of the council. I agree completely with Eric DeBode, who works with homeless people, that having law enforcement involved with an ordinance that would, on the face of it, be a humane thing is actually not. So please do not pass the countywide ordinance that is under consideration. The second item has to do with rent stabilization. Again, I think that's really important for the community. I've spoken about this before. The realtors are up in arms about it. That itself should give you some pause, because those people are very vehemently in favor of not having rent stabilization, but the people who really need it aren't afraid to show up. So please consider continuing the rent registry and rent stabilization ordinances. I think they're really important. And the last item is what I don't usually agree with Chad Hooker, but this time I think he's completely right. I think we need to make a single special district that includes water and sanitary services along the whole coastside. So that's a long process, but let's start doing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Harvey. Next speaker is Amber Stowe, followed by Jimmy Benjamin.
Apologies, I'm under the weather. Thank you so much, council and staff, for hosting this priority setting meeting. Already we've seen measurable progress thanks to the Downtown Vitality Ordinance that was passed last year. Actual measurable progress on Main Street, which is wonderful. And to build on that, we need another ordinance, and the title of that ordinance would be a Formula Business Ordinance. And what that amounts to is creating a district around our historic downtown in which chain stores cannot overtake and compete with our homegrown businesses. What I've heard from many of my customers, not only from Half Moon Bay, but also from parts beyond, is that the reason why they come to our downtown as opposed to other downtowns in our area is because we have unique local businesses. We don't have the standard cookie cutter chains that you find in a lot of districts. And unfortunately, having a downtown filled with cookie cutter chains would be the best case scenario if we don't pass something like this. The worst case scenario, of course, being rents that are sky high because the larger chains can pay those kinds of rents. And subsequently, when those chain stores get bought out or pulled in by other chains, we end up with a bunch of empty locations as soon as those places don't see a 10% profit margin every quarter. We would then end up with a empty and vacant downtown. So my urging is to find a way to pass a formula business ordinance, as other downtowns in Northern California have already successfully done, and we can keep downtown available and friendly for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Amber. The next speaker is Jimmy Benjamin, followed by Brent Simmons.
Good afternoon, council members, staff, and members of the public. I'm Jimmy Benjamin from 400 Pillarcitos Avenue. I'm here to exhort you to follow up on last year's priority of dealing with our hydrology. My creek, the Kehoe watercourse, and that of some of my neighbors, the Pullman watercourse, are case studies in damage of public infrastructure and private property that concern me. I heard a lot of wonderful ideas today. I've read the report. Those are delightful, shiny projects. Many of them are discretionary. Honoring the Coastal Act and your zoning ordinance is not discretionary, it's required. And I don't understand why the priority you set last year with respect to hydrology that stops flooding risk, erosion risk, sedimentation risk, has no meaningful planning activity. I have met with members of your staff, past and current. They're delightful. I have met with you. You are also delightful. But I don't see any progress, and damage continues to occur from unpermitted projects. We can no longer afford to ignore this as a city. It will become more expensive. I'd like to remind you that the local coastal program makes this a requirement. It is not discretionary. So please act on your responsibilities to address these concerns. Make it a priority. Make staff understand that it is your priority. I hope we don't get to do this again next year. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Brent Simmons, followed by John Rossi.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me here. My name is Brent Simmons. I'm a homeowner at 2782 Pullman, and the Pullman ditch flows through my property. We purchased our property about 6 years ago, and it's been an ongoing struggle. Each year seems to get worse. You wouldn't know it looking outside today. But example, we moved in, the ditch was somewhere in the depth of 3 feet. It is now at 6 feet. The situation is literally eroding right before us. And we've had very productive meetings with city staff and thought we were making progress, but it is now an emergency situation. We have got to get a design in place to allow us, the homeowners, to go out and find funding with the city's approval so that we can put this situation to bed. I just can't emphasize enough how important it is that we, at a minimum in the upcoming budget, can provide for the design. All of the homeowners that I speak with are willing to contribute to this effort, time and or money, but we can't simply just let it go into the budget a few years from now or 5 years from now. These are very real. And in one of our discussions, there was an interesting question from the building department, what constitutes an emergency? I would say my neighbor having 6 inches of water in their house
Please wrap up.
constitutes that. Thank you, and I appreciate it, everyone.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is John Rossi, followed by Sandy Bella.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak in front of City Council. So I'm going to follow on, I guess it's the Pullman ditch theme here for the next few speakers. So I live slightly downstream from Brent. I also have the Pullman ditch come through my home, or rather through my property. So I've been here 5 years. I've had 9 flooding events, including one that came into the home, and this year would have been the 10th. So we do have a problem. The weather is nice. It's easy to forget about, but we're worried about the future and doing something now. So, I put together a few things. So going to attachment 1, page 7 of the staff report. This is fiscal year 2025 to 2026 accomplishments within the first 8 months under programs and projects. The statement worked closely with residents and businesses and made progress in efforts to resolve ongoing flooding issues along the Pullman watercourse in the Miramar neighborhood. The key points I want to raise are, yes, we did have great dialogue with several city council members or staff members that are sitting in the room now, as well as multiple residents, to really identify and clarify what the flooding and erosion issues are. So what came out of that? Community engagement drove 2 inspections at Rocket Farms, I believe a third. There were findings. We've also engaged the California Water Board about pollution and flooding concerns, as well as erosion and dumping of stormwater during peak rain. What came out of those conversations next? Bypass is a best near-term option, and current land use agreements allow for this option. The property owner at 2800 wants to do this before they start their construction. They are on board. What we need is bypass design for cost bidding and feasibility processes. Brendan mentioned there are community members that are willing to pay for this. And so just keep that in mind. Now, when I go to attachment 4 on page 107, capital projects.
Excuse me, your time is up.
Yeah, well, what I'm asking for is endorsement of a plan so that we can move forward with cost bidding. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rossi. The next speaker is Sandy Vella.
Hi there. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. Here are a few of the top priorities I had listed 555 Kelly leasing agreement proposal at $1 per year for 99 years. Can we put this on the ballot for all of us to vote on? This is an incredibly long-term commitment, which will affect all of us, and funding decisions way, way, way out into the future. Let's be of sound mind and all agree on the decision, as this will impact all citizens and the loss of potential income which is to the city, which is astronomical. Next topic, motorhomes. Please start ticketing and evict motorhomes for parking violations within the Half Moon Bay city limits. These motorhomes present an environmental hazard as waste disposal is a problem. In addition, people are actively working on their motorhome engines. Saw somebody yesterday, in fact. This is a present safety and noise hazard. Thank you for starting this process already. I know there's been some work and effort around this, which is great. Main Street Bridge, please paint the bridge. I think this is still on tap for April, which if that's the case, that's great. It really spruces up the city and, which is a welcoming sign to visitors. Next one, e-bikes and scooters. I'd encourage us to prioritize creation and enforcement of an e-bike and scooter law.
Can you please wrap it up, Sandy?
Sure, absolutely. And then the other one, Stone Pine Center Housing. I was driving by there today, and it's still not completely occupied. Can we get some local senior farm workers in there? I know it's a county-wide or county-driven effort, but if we could work with those guys to get some of our farm workers in there, that'd be great.
Next speaker is Joe Farrell, followed by Colleen Henney.
Good afternoon. Whoops.
Sometimes it works better that way.
Like this. Yeah. Good afternoon, council members, and thank you for the listening session. I'm here to speak about Pullman Ditch as well, and to encourage to make this a continued #1 priority, as you had elected to do last year. There's been many, many decisions over the years by the city, inadvertently or whatever, that have really put us in this situation. And I just want to bring up one as an example to show why it's so important. In 2008, the city council was to approve a Caltrans CDP to redirect the water flow going across the street from Pullman Ditch, crossing across the street into the Stolotsky subdivision, and then half went to Pullman Ditch. The city council denied the appeal that we had put together, even though the engineering report said redirecting all of that across the Pullman Ditch, it won't be supported, and it will be up to an additional 648,000 gallons of water per day. And that's what's happened, and that's the reason why we are having so much flooding. And it really is, it's at the direction of the city that it's got to get resolved. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Colleen Henney, followed by Emily Den Herder.
Hello, City Council. Thanks so much for having this listening session. I am Colleen Henney from the Half Moon Bay Downtown Association. I have 2 businesses on Main Street, and I am in favor of the formula business ordinance. I feel like hopefully that might be easy, low-hanging fruit. I sent the council an article about downtown San Luis Obispo and the pitfalls that they've come into in that city. There are a lot of factors, including parking, snafus, so to speak, that they ran into, but also, rising rents really is the biggest, I think, culprit. If we had rents downtown like they do in San Luis Obispo, we certainly as a business would not survive. We would have to close. And big box chain stores are a very big driver of those high rents. So it feels like that's just an easy way to protect our heritage 4 blocks of Main Street. And I also just wanted to say thank you for all the work we've done so far with the vitalization of Main Street. We really love it. Thank you.
Thank you, Colleen.
Hi, I'm Emily Dunherter. Thank you for having us here and listening to us today. I just came out in support of the community pool. I didn't have time to prepare a comment, so I'm going to kind of wing it here. I'm a Half Moon Bay resident, moved here about 5 years ago with my son, and parents in the room might recognize me from the moms boards because I'm always looking for a pool to teach my kid to swim at. And I was kind of surprised when we moved here that a town that is famous for its waves does not have a community pool that I can just take my kid to. I take him to swim lessons at Petite Baleen, but half an hour a week is not sufficient when you live in a coastside community. It's not enough time to teach a kid how to swim. Not to mention the fact that there are a lot of people who love to swim and a lot of people who use pools for reasons other than teaching their kids to swim. I grew up in the Great Lakes, and community pools there are kind of a fixture of every town because communities recognize the public health imperative of teaching kids to swim when they live on a large body of water. We don't have waves as big as they have out here, but everybody really loves swimming out there. So it's just something that's dear to my heart and something I'm passionate about, and I was happy to hear that it's being considered. Let me see, what else was I going to say? I guess one thing I was thinking about was the town I grew up near is called Holland, Michigan, and they made a fantastic community pool. There are like 6 pools. There is a long course competition pool. There is a warm pool that is used for rehabilitation and health. There is a splash pad for the kids, and that place is mobbed. It never doesn't have a crowd. So I guess if am I out of town?
Your time's up.
Okay.
Thank you.
I guess I'll just close that by saying that would be a good model. I'll email you guys. That's a good model to look at as far as building a community pool.
Your time is up.
All right. Thank you.
The next speaker is Carrie Burke.
Good afternoon. I'm Carrie Burke. Thank you for having this priority setting session. I did notice one item missing from your list. I'm speaking as an individual, but as a bit of a context, since 2020, I've been the CERT team leader for Amesport Landing. I'm also on their Fire Safe Committee and was recently elected to their board of directors. A substantial portion of Half Moon Bay, east of Main Street, is now designated as a very high hazard area with the recently released maps from CAL FIRE. City Hall is just a few buildings away from being in this zone, and actually a few buildings in Amesport Landing are within the very high hazard zone. The property insurance for Amesport Landing increased almost 3-fold this year, and the reason is really the increased fire danger. The insurance companies are taking note. The Fire Safe Committee and the HOA board are reviewing everything that they can do to reasonably reduce the fire hazard, including vent screening. We're converting all of our siding to fire safe materials, and of course the removal of all vegetation within 5 feet of buildings. That is what is going to be recommended by the state. We understand that the state Zone 0 regulations are forthcoming and will require implementation and coordination with the local jurisdictions. We hope to work with the city and find some reasonable regulations that will take into account this dynamic situation so that we can protect our residents and our businesses from this real and present danger of a fire threat. Thank you for your consideration of this matter.
Thank you, Carrie. I see that we have two speakers online. Rick Hernandez.
Hello, Rick Hernandez. I'm longtime planning commissioner and speaking on my own behalf. Millions of people visit Half Moon Bay's beaches, hotels, trails, golf courses, and harbor. Most visitors never make it to historic downtown, and too few spend time on Main Street at our shops or restaurants. We've heard consistent feedback from the Chamber, the Downtown Association, and the Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Committee that we need to activate downtown, and we should move forward with the Streetscape Master Plan, which was approved in July of 2024. This is shovel-ready. It improves wayfinding, accessibility, and the visual appeal of historic downtown. It also strengthens local businesses, builds our tax base, and creates jobs. It has been the single most requested item from the written comments of your listening sessions. At the same time, another thing missing from the priority list is Pilarcitos Creek Trail. This corridor should be the crown jewel of downtown. It connects historic downtown and Carter Park to commercial downtown and the neighborhoods west of Highway 1. Instead, it suffered from neglect. We need clear direction from council and staff to build on the work that Caltrans and the Creekside Development Project have done to remove encampments and hazards. That means finishing the cleanup, enforcing nuisance rules on adjacent properties, removing invasive species, and restoring the creek so it functions for flood mitigation, erosion control, and wildlife habitat. I'm also glad to see that Carter Park activation, permanent volleyball courts, and the fire pits made it to the list. These are the kinds of healthy activities our community needs. We should also begin planning for Pilarcitos to the Sea, which is already envisioned in the local coastal land use plan, a trail connecting downtown to the beach. It would bring visitors to downtown and reduce car traffic. Finally, most importantly, we need to take wildfire and flooding risk more seriously. Updating the safety elements is important, but we need better creek monitoring, a clear evacuation plan, and action on stormwater flooding along Pullman, Roosevelt, and Kehoe Ditch. Thank you. These are the highest impact investments we can make for a healthy, safe, and economically vital community.
Thank you. Are you also on here as Rick?
I am, but I think Hillary wanted to speak as well.
Hillary. This is Hillary. Go for it, Hillary.
I was on the other device. I'm Hillary, and I'm the chair of the Parks and Rec Commission, and I was really glad to hear a lot of the Parks and Rec Commission priorities mentioned. Part of those priorities include working with the school district on MOUs, and in light of the comments that people have been making about the pool, I just think that a good priority for the city council would be to just think about the pool and MOUs. We're working on a letter of support for the pool that really looks at how community access could be granted on for a number of daytime hours for all the community for the pool. And I think it's going to take a collaboration effort of a number of people to make something like this happen. But some of the groundwork is in place, and we're seeing good things happening with pickleball collaboration and the tennis club collaboration up at the high school. So I think it would be good for the city council to think about creative models that really put in place a solid MOU that would solidify community access to the pool and see if there's something we can make happen quickly given this opportunity. So that's, I think, the main thing I want to add to the conversation. I support a lot of the other things around Parks and Rec that we were mentioning earlier. Thanks.
Thank you, Hillary.
Thank you, Hillary.
Some new slips have come in. And these are going to be the last slips I take. We're going to move on to deliberation soon after a break. So Ms. Ruiz Acosta, you are next, followed by Miguel Ariano.
Hi, this is my first time here. I'm just to translate from Spanish to English. Habla lo que tú quieres.
Mi nombre es Marlene y hablo también sobre el problema que hay aquí en Half Moon Bay sobre las rentas. Y a pesar de que se hizo un pequeño avance.
Excuse me, we're going to need to have translation for your comments.
I think he's going to do the
He's going to
translation
do
for
the
her.
translating. Oh, okay, sorry about that. Let her speak a little bit, then translate, and then, yeah, thank you.
Se hizo un pequeño avance con las rentas hacia nosotros los trabajadores en las trailas movibles, pero quedamos excluidos lo que es.
There is a little bit advance on the rent, on the rents, but on the new trailers, they put it at Miramontes, or I don't know what. So it's a little bit advanced on the rent, but she's trying to say the people working with the hotels, house cleaning, and restaurants, when they make an application to get a house to rent or anything, they don't have that priority. They go out. So she's trying to say, just take a note on that and probably work the city council on that for the people.
Consideramos nosotros que somos parte importante para atender y atraer el turismo, tanto como lo que he escuchado que hablan de las tiendas, es lo mismo, las rentas. Pienso que nosotros atraemos parte de turismo.
So it's very important for the tourists, for the tourist people, very important for the people working at the hotels, house cleaning, and especially the hotels and house cleaning, it's very important for them. And restaurant, it's very important for them, for the city. Like they are saying about anything else, but sometimes they don't speak about the rent. It's going high, and the people is not getting enough money. And the other thing is the people working on hotels, restaurants, and house cleaning, they don't take the application. That's all. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Nancy Fontana.
I just want to, this is the second time I've come to a priority setting meeting, and I find it very helpful for the community. And because I see people here that aren't at some of the meetings I've been to, I want to thank publicly staff and the city council. I'm pretty vocal and don't always agree, but I've felt that you've reached out to me and listened to me, and also are always very, accommodating when I go into City Hall and that sort of thing. So I do appreciate that. I want to give support on the pool, because having grown up here, I went through no pool, children, and then when we had a pool, my children actually getting ear infections because it was too cold, and barely being able to afford a few private lessons so they'd get good enough to then go back to the pool, the pool I could afford, the high school pool, and actually improve their skills, because I couldn't pay for them to go to 3 times a week to private lessons. It was pretty tough. So I support that. In the downtown businesses, I think anything you can do to support the charm and quaintness of Half Moon Bay and give the businesses, the support that they need to maintain the character of our town. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you, Nancy. That is the end of public comment. So we will take a short break, and I would say everybody come back here around 20 after 2. Thank you. I think I might have passed back the next speakers. Excuse me, in the back of the room, could you please take your seats? We have one speaker who was overlooked. I'm sorry. She can come up now to the podium.
Hola, buenas tardes.
Hello, good afternoon.
Mi nombre es Miguel Arellano.
My name is Miguel Arellano.
Yo tengo un problema de que ya tengo mis 62 años y he aplicado para los departamentos que están en la MEN para gente de bajos.
My name is Miguel Arellano, and I'm 62 years old, and I have applied many times for the senior housing for the affordable housing for seniors, and I haven't been able to get into those apartments.
Y pues nunca me han hablado, no sé si me han echado afuera, no sé qué está pasando, pero necesito una vivienda.
And I don't know what's happening, but I need a house.
Creo que es todo lo que quiero decir, porque no sé casi expresarme, casi no sé muy. Ella me está ayudando.
For my part, that's it. I'm also gonna talk for a little bit. My name is Belinda Vargas. Thank you for the opportunity, and I work closely with seniors in our community. And through my experience, I have seen how difficult it is for many other adults in Half Moon Bay to find affordable housing. Even though there are seniors housing community in the city, many local seniors are still unable to get into these apartments because the waiting lists are very long. At the same time, we sometimes see people moving into these units who did not previously live in Half Moon Bay or work in this community. This can be frustrating for seniors who have lived and contribute to this community for many years and hope to remain here as they age. Many of them are now in risk of having to move away from the place they call home. This shows that there is strong need for more affordable senior housing and for more solutions that help ensure local seniors have the opportunity to remain in their community. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If there's somebody on staff who could talk about housing opportunities and direct people, that would be,
You want us to talk about it now? We are getting his contact information, and
already
we're going to
did?
follow up.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Great.
All right. So we're moving on to the next item, which is 2026-27 priority setting exercises, and we will hear from the city manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is really what we're here for today, but we, of course, appreciate the additional public comment we've received, and that will be added to the record. And I know that the council heard it and takes note of it, and will be thinking about it as they talk through this today. But the purpose of this meeting today really is for the council to talk about priorities. And this is a really, really important part of our budget process. We have a finite amount of funding available each year, and we have to be very thoughtful about how we allocate those funds. Much of it goes towards the routine things that we do, what we call our core services, whether it's, again, responding to the public, fixing our roads, maintaining our parks. But there are special projects that we do to move the city forward, to modernize things, and to improve the quality of life here. And that really is what this discussion is about in the context of the resources that we have. So on your screen, is it on your screens now? If you could show the council the screen. There are 3 slides that we're going to be using today. This is primarily the one that we'll be using. We have a couple of staff here who will be taking notes as you go through and share your priorities. This next slide, what you see here right now are the priorities or projects that exist in attachments 3 and 4. And I know that some of it is completely too small to read, and that's okay. Really what the purpose of this slide is to show the distribution of the workload of these projects amongst our 5 departments here at the city. And it just helps to show that, you know, for instance, you look at admin services, there's not a ton of things there, but what you do have to remember is admin services, they provide all the support services for all of our departments. So there really isn't anything that the city does that our human resources, finance, IT, and risk staff aren't supporting. But again, this is just to show that distribution of workload across the different departments. The font for Public Works is really, really small because, of course, one of the most important things that they do is our capital projects delivery, and there's a lot on our plates right now related to that. The items in green are the items we're currently working on. The items in the brownish orange you're seeing on your screen are the potential new items that are coming forward. This next slide, this was just kind of arbitrary on my part. I tried to kind of categorize those same, so this is again a repeat of those lists, and again, very small, and I apologize. There's nothing locked in as far as the categories here. This was me trying to make sense of categorizing some of these items, and of course there's an other item. So as we work through this today, if there are new or additional items that need to be included on this list, or we want to highlight specific projects that already exist, we can go through and add some of that here. I wouldn't worry too much about the fact that you can't see this. This is really for staff to be organized. Yeah, it's really small. We're constrained from a technology standpoint to show this. We've tried it a bunch of different ways, and I think this is more illustrative than what we would work from today. So I'm going to go back to that slide. Brian, if we could move out of presentation mode so that as staff are typing the notes, we can see them updated live. So we'll add each council member as they're called upon by the mayor, and then we'll add the priorities as they come. Council member, just so we can test this, who are you going to have go first today?
I've been starting on either end of the dais, but I think today I'll start in the middle.
Okay.
And I'll start with Councilmember Brownstone.
Okay.
And I just want to clarify, when he's calling out priorities, it could be from the existing list or new projects, correct?
Yeah, I think we're trying to accomplish 2 things here today. One is, first and foremost, are there things that are not already on the list that need to be included at least for discussion purposes? And then as you look at these lists that have been provided, are there certain things there that you want to call out as either being of the highest priority, or maybe we need to talk about it? Why is it even on the list, So I think that's what will be helpful for staff. Today, we're trying to reach some consensus on prioritization and what should be added. As we know in the past, staff will build a work plan to bring back for council to respond to
So
and
are
vote
you
on
asking
later.
first to prioritize from the existing list of projects and then adding new ones?
I mean, that's really up to you. I think it would be probably easier to first identify anything that is not on the list that needs to be added, because then we can talk through prioritizing what's here.
Okay. All right, Councilmember Brownstone, are you ready to roll?
Madam Mayor?
Great.
Before we start, so current projects, attachment 3, correct? That's what's ongoing, what has been, we have been, and we are working on. Is that true? Okay. Attachment 4 is potential projects, which is what we're talking about right now. Is that true?
I think he wants you to talk about
So everything on attachment 4. Can we bring something outside of attachment 4 that was not listed?
Yeah, I think that's what I'm saying is, starting with attachment 4, what is not showing up here that should be?
Okay.
Right.
I'm clear.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So under continuous housing and affordability, we've had our housing element conditionally approved, and I think we just have to keep prioritizing, making sure our ordinances are up to date to support the LCP around our housing element, and keep in contact with HCD about anything. I mean, they have been known sometimes to withdraw an approval. Conditional approval might be even a little more vulnerable, depending on making sure step by step we are on the right schedule to get that approved to avoid other consequences down the road. I think we have been doing a lot. There's a number of projects in the pocket, including 555 Kelly and the project down on Main Street that are gaining attention. So I think the more we can keep our focus on those, the more we won't be creating any doubts in HCD's mind regarding our housing element. Well, the other area, well, it's already here on current projects, rent stabilization and registry, and completing our conversations around that. And again, for me, it's a top priority since people are, there's a lot of folks in our community who are constantly faced with tough decisions about being able to afford rent, afford to pay for food, and avoiding homelessness. So to me, that raises the priority of that under housing. Public safety, it's come up. I think fire, depending on the season. So now we're slowly coming out of spring, coming out of fall, coming into spring. Sorry, coming out of winter. Spring is a few days around the corner. So I think issues that have already come up today at today's meeting around flooding mitigation and what projects can we prioritize versus others in terms of our infrastructure and some of the ditches and changing the direction of some of the waters that are threatening homes and neighborhoods. But I think fire mitigation is also affecting large number of neighborhoods, homeowners, just people living here. We talked about, it's come up already in conversation today about hot zones and maps and people seeing their insurance rates rising up to 300%, we heard today in the room. And that's a multi-pronged approach to fire mitigation. So one is again, focusing a little more on some of those maps and how those determinations get made and whether or not we have any impact on that in terms of which zones are considered hot zones and not. In terms of the actual mitigation, we do have a huge organized CERT communities in Half Moon Bay, and I think we can leverage CERT. We have a lot of people trained, a lot of people who can be trained on what it takes to armor housing. And I'd like to see that effort not so much focused on compliance issues and people getting cited, but where the community comes together and helps each other. So some people feel they're having trouble armoring their homes. Maybe they can't mow their lawns. They can't cut back the shrubbery 5 feet, need some advice. You know, folks in the community can offer advice and help, and we can get community members to pool resources to help each other fireproof their homes. Because, you know, it really just takes one house on a block or a neighborhood that's not fireproofed. And if a fire bursts out and for embers to start floating around the house, that's what we've seen in other communities in Los Angeles. So from what I hear, fire mitigation is a top priority, and it impacts every single person in the community. On governance and accountability, I wasn't, you know, we're already looking at efforts. We have a subcommittee on restructuring and, you know, pushing more and more on making sure that we have structural solutions to our budget deficit. I think it's pretty incredible that in only a year and a half, we've cut our budget deficit by almost 60%. But I want to see continuous progress there. And, you know, we've done a great job, but we've also put a lot of pressure on staff, et cetera. And Councilmember Nagin-Gast and I and staff are, you know, working on making sure we can ensure that balance of work, make sure things done effectively, and keeping a healthy budget and our reserves healthy. So for me, governance and accountability is critical because the budget influences everything else on our priority list. So everything that's being put through that filter is critical. And then on infrastructure and public works, I'd like to, you know, I think a priority is, and that we have a visibility to it, is some of the things that people notice every day. Are the street lights working? Are the potholes being fixed? We don't always report on that, but I want to make sure there's accountability. Because pretty much in a lot of areas where we drive now, we see a lot of pothole work that needs to be redone. We have had flooding. We have every morning we have heavy garbage collection vehicles going through streets and just kind of tearing up the road. So I'd like to see more visibility to the accountability that we have around that. And it's the kind of stuff that people notice the most. And also, I think we've already mentioned a lot of stuff that we're doing downtown in terms of having signage, wayfinding. For me, a priority is making sure that we do have wayfinding signage in the middle of heritage streets, having a kiosk at MacJutra Park has been mentioned. For me, that's a priority. Everybody, you know, who goes to any kind of shopping center, they're used to looking for those kiosks where you can see where all the stores are. It ensures that people all the way up and down Main Street appear. And so I think the sooner we can get that done, I think we certainly have the budget for it. It's not overly expensive. That would be great. Okay, I'm going to stop now because I think a lot of other folks will have things that I'll agree with, but those are just some top things for me.
Thank you, Member. Thank you, Councilmember Brownstone. Councilmember Nagin-Gast.
Thank you. And First off, I want to acknowledge, staff to do more with less, and it's great to be able to try to piece things together with limited staff and take on more work. And I wanted to make sure I did acknowledge that publicly, and it's duly noted. Appreciate it. But I also want to make sure what did or didn't happen last year, because I even saw it referenced in our agenda report that the last priority set, and I don't know what that word set means, was fiscal year 24-25. So I'm not sure what happened 25-26. So whatever did or didn't happen, I want to make sure that happens this year. And what I believe is, especially with our staffing and hopefully matrix, Councilmember Brownstone mentioned that we have some organizational assessments occurring to help where we are with the staff, and I think our priorities are also going to dictate the staffing levels we should have. The current priority projects, it's still a handful for staff. I mean, we still have not finished that. And specific items, we're here just to, we're not going to talk about how to solve it, because I heard some things about 555 Kelly, ballot on, off. I heard things about sewer. We're not here to solve that. But I think we are here to say, okay, that will come back later, and we can talk about it more. But I know in our current projects, and then I'll look at the potential. I just took it by projects, and then we can figure out maybe where that fits. But I don't want us to forget, there was, to me, and the reason I ran, there was a concern about not taking care of our streets or roads, maybe the way we could have or should have, however we want to term it, but put more of an emphasis to put us, I call, back together again. And I use like Kelly Avenue, and I'm going west of 1, not east, but east of 1 too, because Kelly has, it gets a lot of traffic on it, and that's why you're seeing potholes right out here and on the entrance to Ted Adcock Center. But a lot of the parallel roads to the beaches and parking, and I'll go with Kelly, Poplar, Redondo Beach Road, and Miramontes Point Road. I think we need, as part of the, maybe it's not the 26, 27 anymore, pavement management construction, but to let's put more emphasis on our paving program and bring things back. I know we did do some paving this year. It was mentioned in Alsace, maybe Arleta Park neighborhood too, got a little bit of paving this year. Not always, that boundary line between Alsace and Arleta is always commingles to me, but in our signs, I can tell you just noticeable things, like street poles that have no signs on them. Do we still, to me, it's clutter, and maybe they've been there so long we don't even see them anymore. But just to clean that up, signs that you can't even read anymore. I've been told by the sheriff they won't enforce something if they can't read it. The biggest example is no parking. If you can't read the no parking sign, they're not going to enforce no parking. So if you got some type of sign program, and that kind of, and I didn't know if that also fell in with the minor bike ped improvements, safe streets, kind of that whole paving on existing, the current priority projects. So, and, I know Carter Park, we're still, City Council hasn't formally accepted that project. So it is not completely completed. So I'll make sure that we, are moving forward. If there's work the contractor needs to finish, we get that done, because I'm worried we get too far and the contractor's going to say, you guys have been using this for a year now, it's yours. So I just want to make sure we stay on that, and that's why I'm interested in staying with the current priority projects to get us to finish those and make sure we're still on top of that. Especially, I want to make sure we got the implementation plan for it. That's a biggie, and I know we got a grant funding for that, so hopefully. And then I'm going to now look at the potential projects, just because it's easier for me to see some things that I know we've talked about in the past year that I think either it's coming up on it as an agenda item later on, or maybe it should. But just going down the list, I heard, I'm going to go, well, I'll go with the ones that aren't on the list first, and then I'll go down the list. Not on the list is perhaps the sewer. I heard that a couple of people talk about, one sewer agency or one sewer and water. But I'm hearing more of that being discussed out publicly. And same with the swimming pool. I don't know where we go with the pool, but I think we could discuss it, what that means. I hear support. I hear, support means different things to different people. A letter, just say, oh, yeah, what a great idea, we'll do it. Or no, we need $500,000. I don't know what that means, nor do I know if we can afford that. But I think the dialogue we could have and just, see the realities of that. And again, I don't know how soon the school's trying to get us to go on that, but things I'll come up with. The downtown, the chain store formula business ordinance, the parking to look at. I mean, we're not settling anything here as we sit, but just I think discussion on there, because I know some of the parking concerns are the large vehicles that stick out in the angled parking. It's hard for bicycles just trying to drive on Main, but also for other cars to get around them, or when they're, safety concerns. The wayfinding signage, I think that's all part of the downtown streetscape. The homeless encampment ordinance, we talked about that, whether it's the same form as the Horizons, the one the county has, whether it's the same form or not, or even if we adopt something, but I think we should bring something forward and talk about it. The e-bike, e-conveyance ordinances, I really want that. And, that's not going to be easy. I watched the county had a difficult time with it. So it's going to be challenging, but it's something I think we committed ourselves that we could do. I also like the emergency prep, evacuation planning, fire map implementations. We need to know our escape routes. We need to know what we're doing, or how we should do. And then finally on the storm drain, I remember last year talking about that we didn't need a citywide analysis. We know our challenging areas. Those would be Pullman, Kehoe. I throw in Seymour, just because there's some things related to how Seymour, across from those homes, how that drains into the ditch. But that's something I think part of the Seymour, and we've already moved our pedestrian bridge once, just not wanting to do it again. So again, basically keep the current. Those were the newer projects that I thought we either are already talked about that we're going to bring forward, or I think we should. That's it. Yes, that's it.
There might be some overlap here, but is that okay, or is that all right? So I did a preliminary list, and then I did another list, so my list keeps growing. But these are things that come to mind, and it's people contacting me, and today was kind of a weird day because I only had so many hours. As I work, and I have a business, and I'm running it just short-staffed like our city is, and overworked. So I hunkered down, and I noticed there was a lot of talk about the pool as we saw today, so I want to bring that forward. I did talk to John Nazar last night. We had a dinner party at their house, and boys and girls may be active. I'm just throwing ideas out there. I'd like to go further into that. I know we're broke. I'm not asking the city to pay for this. I'm just saying keep the dialogue moving. As you can see, a lot of people are interested. Street paving. I'd like to make sure that we're not just Al Saints Lorraine and we're looking at other streets, especially like Frontage Road where we are, which may be incorporated with the new expansion that's happening, but streets in general, that we're staying on top of the potholes and making our city look and drive safely. Paving, and then that goes into striping and signs, because our signs are starting to be faded. If you take an example, when you go to Ritz-Carlton, you'll see the signs that are all faded. It says no parking, you can't even read it. So there's too many of those signs anyways. I think it's an overkill. And you have a red curb there, so the red curb should be sufficient. But we need to maintain those signs. A lot of signs are crooked, a lot of signs are faded. Another example, if you go down Main Street, across the street from the firehouse, the sign there that shows that there's a fire station is sitting there dangling in the wind, and it's sitting there rusted and broken. So pay attention to the little details, because our town is starting to fall apart. Wave Crest, the Coastside Land Trust, there was a potential that there was supposed to be a bathroom there, and I talked to Sarah Bolger about this when we toured it with her one-on-one. And there's supposed to be an ADA compliant porta potty that was there temporarily until the bathroom gets there. I don't see one. I'd like to make sure that we get that. That was a verbal agreement that she thought was a good idea. Then the other thing I want to bring up is when you're parking at the Coastside Land Trust, the Wavecrest property, which is a great trail, by the way. If you guys haven't done it, please do it. It's amazing. They did a great job. With that said, with that film crew that was in there just recently, did about $40,000 worth of damage. So when we go into that mode, and that's something I just heard today, when we go into the film mode, which is one of the priorities here, we need to make sure we have an insurance policy that covers us for any damage that happens to our city. The other one would be the parking lots, when we have two of the parking lots at that location, and then there's one over at Smith Field. There should be a sign indicating when you're in parking lot A, you can go to parking lot B, and if you can't find anything, you go to parking lot C, which is Smith Field. So that because you get people that are from outside that don't know where to go. So I see that when I was there, when I was kind of watching the parking flow. People were pulling in, pulling out, and then they would go to the next one, but they don't know about, you can go to Smith Field, and there's a lot more parking at Smith Field, and you can jump on that trail from Smith Field. If you haven't done it, you can't. Beach signs at the beach, basically saying, if you're paying for your parking, let's give an example, Poplar Beach, you're paying your fees for the parking, and in that, somewhere in that location, and we brought this forward before, you're reading a sign that says, if you need, there's hotels, there's restaurants, there's merchants, whatever, downtown's over here. So basically, when you're at the beach, you're being indicated you can go to downtown, so that there's this communication back and forth that we do have other earth services in our town. Carter Park, we're not sure if that's completely signed off. We do have some warranty issues, some issues that I think is concerning, where when you walk up the stairs, the lights are all hanging down, the cables are hanging down, so we have trip and fall liability right now. We have not signed off on that, and we don't know when the warranty is going to extend, and the further time we wait, and the list should be generating, we should be processing that. At the end of the day, what would be nice is to know if, let's say, for example, we're going to rent that, or somebody wants to rent it to have a concert that could be either nonprofit or profitable or whatever. There's no fee structure set up for it. We can't utilize it. It'd be great for the community to use that for, let's say, the World Cup. And if we had a TV, we can actually do it and watch it as a community. VIP social, that's some of the things I'm seeing from Park and Rec. The placards, which was an idea that I think Paulette came up with. I think it's a great idea to raise money. There is no structure there. Who do I talk to? Where can I donate some money? I need to have that defined so we know what to do, so we can start that process. I'd like to see ADA fast tracking for units being approved in-house so that we can get those processing so we can get low-income housing going. Measure D, better maps, which is already on our indicators here. It's on the bandwidth I think we're working on. Pickleball at boys and girls, because that's becoming quite popular, or getting more sports that are popular, like the line dancing and all that, which draws people together, keeps the community happy, and I think it's a great thing. So we need to have facilities for them, and not with the fee structure so it's feasible and sustainable for these groups to do this stuff. The fire pit is also another thing that I think should be approved, finalized, because what I saw after that project was done, and the people that were coming from the other side of the hill, that you randomly ask them where they're coming from, they're saying this is the best thing they've ever seen, and they're thoroughly enjoying it. And all the safety precautions that we actually finalized as a group here, as city council members, it's being utilized and enjoyed. I think we should further on with that. The Ritz-Carlton Trail, if you guys do the trail now, the one that I was talking about, and go all the way to the end, you'll know where the bridge goes on the Ritz-Carlton. There's tree roots and there's a bridge. You cannot access this final piece to go to Ritz-Carlton. So you're now in Ritz-Carlton's property. Zero way to get a wheelchair through there. So that's something I tried to do with my daughter. It doesn't work. And then I went there on my bike and I noticed a family stopped and pulled their child out of the baby carriage, walked it, and then they had to carry their carriage through this whole thing. So it's just a small section, but it's just the very end section that needs to be dealt with.
Just to clarify, so you're talking about the stretch of trail between Redondo Beach Road and Ocean Colony?
Yeah, it's right at the very end.
Yeah.
Right as you turn, it's an immediate right turn you got to do, and you can't miss it.
Yeah.
Streets, improve potholes. I mean, they're just like, for instance, I'm going to use mine, which is in my area, the frontage road, which could be covered by, when we do the expansion, but I just want to, like, in general, I would like most of our streets taken care of, and when we catch it, we deal with it, especially before the seasons come in. Box store ban, I definitely agree with that, what the merchants are bringing forward. Parking ordinances on Main Street, whatever we have to do to keep our streets safe. I know that's a big discussion. How are we going to park and where we're going to park and how we're going to park it, especially with the trucks, large trucks. Pillarcitos cleanup, homeless camps, fences, which we talked about. What they've done out there, they've ruined that whole area, all the riparian area. You guys have done a great job cleaning it, but it needs further cleaning and deeper cleaning. And that also expands out to where the bridge is, where the Caltrans did all that work. And they did not even bother to go another 50 feet and clear out logs and things that are sitting there in that creek. So that's something, they just looked at the boundaries and said that's out of our boundaries, and it just would have taken that one little extra bit to clean that area, and that's right where the homes are. And if you look, you'll see a lot of those homes, or they're actually apartments, rentals, they're actually on stilts because it floods. And that, what we can do is prevent that if we clean all that out. Now, if you go further up into the creek, which I have done, it's basically, we have a lot of what we have is we have a lot of those pallets. The pallets that are over at Safeway have been dragged into the creeks to make bridges, and they're building structures out of those pallets. The cardboard that's from Safeway also is used for walls. So we need to try to keep those products that are at Safeway from getting into our creeks. So Safeway needs to be notified. Those 2 units, those 2 items that I'm talking about needs to be locked in, just like we do with the trash containers and all that stuff, because all the trash was getting put into the creeks. Emergency prep, we need mapping for tsunami and evacuation routes. That's definitely a one, and certified training, like CERT training that we're doing. E-bike safety, which I think is very important right now, especially what happened, and we've known this, we were on it, but we need to move quicker and we need to get something going, and the county is working on that, so it's becoming something that's on the hot topic. Main Street Bridge with ADA, that needs to get going on that, because to try to run a wheelchair on that Main Street Bridge, it's not safe. Done it with my daughter, it doesn't work. Her feet fall out of the platforms, and the stucco looks horrible, and we need to get that rolling. I know it's in the works, but I'd like to see that done. Definitely one agency for the sewer district would be great, get that going. I think that's a major plus. The train depot, paint, peeling, dry rot, expose, which I showed the mayor and Rick Hernandez. That's something that definitely it's in desperate need. Fees for the rec program, costs, get those down to where it's transparent and also so it's affordable. Carter Park, there really isn't any, we talked about this, the other thing was on Carter Park is if there's an emergency for Carter Park, that pathway that's there for the ADA pathway, we have no way of getting a tractor down there or getting any big rigs down there. We're gonna have to now think about buying some kind of emergency vehicles that can get down that pathway. It's a tight turn. That pathway was dug up right as on the opening day, and it's because the angles were incorrect for ADA compliance, so we repaved it twice, so now we're spending more money on doing the job twice, and it doesn't look that great because now you've got big cutouts where it's flattening out. If we do have a flood down there, how are we going to fix that? We don't have a plan in place. let's see, safety concern and liability, we talked about that. No signs to Carter Park. There's nothing referencing where to park, where to go in. It basically, we're putting the load on the merchants. There's no clear direction on that. I'm not sure, even as a citizen living there, where am I supposed to park? Parking structure for downtown. We've talked about this. We need more parking. I know it's not easy to find, but we need to talk about that because we keep bringing that up. Wayfinding, I'm a big supporter of that. Thanks, Chad, for bringing that up. I think he left already, but everybody's in compliance with that. We need that. Kenyatta Cove, Ocean Colony power outages. The trees have been removed. I talked to Joyce about this. She says it's getting better, and just randomly we were talking about this. And Kenyatta Cove had some issues with transformers. So after PG&E did those replacements and did the trimming, they're noticing that there's less power outage. So that's something that needs to be addressed and further ongoing with PG&E. Internet access through Devil's Slide. I know Ray Mueller's working on that. I think we need to make sure that we have better access on internet because when there is an emergency, that is our ultimate way of communicating. Bike safety. I keep bringing that up. I'm going to say it again. Flooding on the Pilocitos Bridge. We talked about that. Let's see. No box stores. Staff based on staff load. Oh, Public Works. Public Works definitely needs, the more and more we put burden on Public Works, and we only have 5 guys, and you've got 2 out, one's got a baby, one's sick, we've got 3 guys. We don't have enough staff. We keep adding to their load, and yet we have the same amount of people. That doesn't work. I try to do it at my work, it doesn't work. And you're overloading them, it doesn't happen. So we need more people, or at least talk about it, and we definitely need to have an evaluation on that. Kiosks, I definitely would recommend that. I think it's a great idea. That's been on the back burner for a while. But I think when you go to any town, like Carmel, I saw it, and you go to Monterey, I've seen it, and wherever I travel, I always look for what they have. Even when you come out here at Ted Adcock Center, if you look right there in the center divider, it says, here you are, and this is where all the structures are. We have it here, but we don't have it in our own Main Street.
Excuse me, Councilmember Johnson, are you close to wrapping up?
Yep, I'm done.
Okay. Vice Mayor.
I'm going to preface my remarks by saying that I've kept my list fairly short, and my reason for that is our overworked staff, and I get it, what's going on. So I'm going to talk only about a few priorities that I have. Number one is, let's not forget about affordable housing. We have got to continue to work on building affordable housing. I'm not talking about just for our Latino folks. I'm talking about for the children of the people that grew up here in Half Moon Bay and who the children who can't afford to live here anymore. Their parents bought a home many, many years ago, and they're priced out. So we've got to look at affordable housing. I would like us to look at it in a venue which includes low-income, middle-income housing together, so that we're not just exclusively working on low-income, but we're doing a combination. In terms of homelessness, I think I agree with what Eric DeBode said. We've been doing a great job with our homeless. We've been doing a fabulous job, much better than any other city in our county. And because of this, we need to keep working the way it's been working. We do not need to adopt a county ordinance to complicate things and make things harder for the homeless folks who are desperately in need of shelter. The idea that we're going to give somebody 3 strikes and you're out, and then we don't have a bed to put them in, seems farcical to me. So let's continue with what we've got. It's working. Let's not put any more money or time into it. E-bikes are a public, not just a nuisance, a public danger. I see it all the time. I see grown men with babies in backpacks speeding down Kelly, going through 2 stop signs, not even looking to the left or right, but just going straight. I see kids. We've seen so much death recently because of e-bikes. I don't think that when we look at the e-bike problem, we need to be looking at solely at education. I think education is critically important. However, unless we register and require a license for e-bikes and e-scooters, any kind of electric vehicle that can run on our streets, until we get them to the DMV and get them licensed, we're not going to solve the problem. The rest is putting Band-Aids on, and can be included. When you get a license, you have to learn what the rules are. You get the education. You're told with your license that you have to wear a helmet. You're told that you can't ride your bike more than 20 miles an hour on a street where kids are pedestrians. At any rate, registration and licensing. I want us to look at a health care district here on the coast. I've been working with the aging community here, and trying to come up with some sort of a solution for health care. And one of the things that we might look at that might make things easier for our aging population and for our underserved is a healthcare district. I am totally in favor of a coastside water and sewer district, which goes all the way from Montara down to Half Moon Bay. It's absurd to have a sewer system which is separated from a water system, when what we really need to be doing is collecting our water that has been recycled by our sewer agency and using that recycled water. It's one system. What goes in and what comes out, it's all one system. Let's do that on the entire coast side. I want us to continue with our rent stabilization and rental registry. I like the idea of a kiosk at McDutra Plaza. I think it's critical to point people in the correct direction when they come here to visit and to know what is available in our town. I have a question. Someone made a statement that the affordable housing that's going to be built, and I think they're talking about the Yep property, affordable housing, won't be built till 2030?
I heard that in the comments. That's
Yeah, I haven't heard anything like that. I've heard between 2 and 4 years.
What I heard was 2030 at the far envelope, right? Worst case, they wanted to start construction in 2027. That was their ideal, yeah. So I think the 2030 is actually the last ditch.
Yeah,
date.
it seems pretty insane to me. The other thing that I think would help both traffic and both the businesses downtown and the look of our city is to get rid of angled parking in Heritage Downtown. Make parking, You know, that's the issue with the big trucks. They're a danger. People, they're parked at a corner, and I try to cross that corner. I can't see what's coming if there's a big truck parked in the last spot. So I'd like us to get rid of angled street parking in Heritage downtown. Oh, and I guess the last thing that I think is important, and that was what was brought up by one of our speakers, a hydrology report, design, a plan for all of our ditches, one overall plan, one overall design. If it's true that we've got homeowners who are willing to pay for it, let's take advantage of that. The city doesn't have the money to do it. Let's take advantage of the offer that the affected homeowners will pay. And let's get a design in place. And I think that's all I can think of for right now. Thanks.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'm just going to mention a couple of things that I didn't really see included first. And it's going to echo some of the other comments we've heard already. But I'm definitely in favor of pursuing water and sewer agency consolidation. I think the council has felt for some years, and staff, that the current Joint Powers Authority, where it's made up of 3 different agencies with 3 different, goals and budgets, has become kind of an anachronism. It's a relic. It doesn't really serve our purposes today. And one of the things in the judge's decision in the recent litigation was that she interpreted the sewer system to be a single system, that any change to it is actually repair and maintenance, right? So if it's a single system, it should be operated as a single system. We're heading into what is likely a super El Nino period, which could be, 1 to 3 years. And that often can mean drought years. And we've seen early spring heat. I'm very familiar with the science. I think we can anticipate very warm summer, very warm year. And that's going to lead to lots of evaporation, to groundwater, soil moisture, and things like that. The only way we're going to be able to address our water problem long-term is by having consolidated water and sewer so that we can do recycling, gray water, all that sorts of stuff. And my impression is support for that has been building in our community and is very strong right now, as you've seen many comments in the Coast Side News. And I think that's not necessarily a huge amount of work. We have to do some studying of it, but it's going to be partnerships, talking with people, some meeting with legislators, supervisors, that sort of thing. But I think it's important to start now because it could take 2 or 3 years, and there's going to be controversy in some quarters, but we sort of have to start the conversation now and get it out there. I don't want us to forget that South Half Moon Bay has a power outage problem, and we've been working on that in the past year, and I want us to continue working on that. I noticed you had some item in there about PG&E, sort of their staging area. That's part of it, but I think the overarching item is, deal with the power outages in South Half Moon Bay, effectively, reducing them, eliminating them, partnering, that kind of thing. And the third sort of new thing I have, I was thinking about, the issue of funding that we have. We have a lot of needs, especially as relates to public works. And there are, grant opportunities in the state, and a lot of them are sort of associated with Prop 4, which is the Natural Resources Bond. But I don't think this is a lot of work initially, but I'd like us to create, and this would be mostly like in the budget, I think. It would be another sort of budget item, the budget account, would be like a coastal access routes improvement project. And that would include, coastal trail improvements, but it would also include coastal access routes, namely roads and streets. So it would be like Redondo, Poplar, Kelly. The other ones I'm thinking of are in state park zones, so they can worry about that themselves. But the ones in the city, Kelly, Poplar, Redondo Beach, I think are worth including in an overall coastal access routes improvement program. And I found working for the state that identifying things, a series of projects as part of a program enhances your ability to get outside funding or to award outside funding. So the work this year would be creating this program, identifying all the pieces for that, maybe doing an inventory of the issues, but not necessarily spending a lot of money on it. But I think, we're a visitor-serving community. We're subject to the Coastal Commission, and therefore, we can access Coastal Conservancy funding and other natural resources agency funding to help, implement those programs. So that would be creation of like a coastal access routes improvement program. So that's sort of the new things I've been thinking about. But I'm just going to go through. So I lumped things into public health, safety, and welfare, and then fiscal, revenue, tax-based sort of issues. And then one was customer service. But top of mind right now is, and it's been brought up already, emergency prep, meaning, an evacuation plan, and also a wildfire map implementation. And that's would include multiple things. But we've been talking about an evacuation program since I joined the council in 2015, and nothing ever changes. And I understand we have to collaborate, but I would say, if the other agencies of the county is not going to step up like this year, then I think we should consider litigation. People offhandedly who are work in public safety, especially, county level, say, well, just drive uphill. That's not an evacuation plan. So we need an evacuation plan, and that's got to be right up there in terms of priority. And it's got to come together this year. We are at increasing risk for wildfire, earthquake, erosion, mass, civil unrest potentially, who knows? So we want to know, should, say there's a tsunami warning, should just maybe the low-lying areas like Miramar, should they be the only ones to evacuate and everybody else, stand down, shelter in place? That to me starts to smack of a real plan for evacuation. And I want it, and I want it now. I do think that we should have an e-bike ordinance. It's basically out of control. A young man has lost his life. I read in the SF Gator Chronicle earlier this week that a nurse was in a collision with a teen on an e-bike and she was killed. And that news sort of evaporated, off the websites pretty quickly. But it's another example. And I talk to people all the time who are like afraid to go out on the coastal trail because of, reckless driving. And I know that the young man who was killed standing on a sidewalk in Burlingame, his family has sued Burlingame, the woman who hit him, the 11-year-old e-bike rider who caused her to have that accident, both their parents, and the law firm is Cotchett, Petrie, and McCarthy, which is Joe Cotzett's firm, and they said, we're going to continue to litigate this way until the state and local governments start dealing with e-bikes. So I hope we're going to do that. Even if it means, for now, adopting the county ordinance, and working on tweaks, lobbying the state mainly. The state's going to have to pull this together. But I think we need to do it. As it relates to 940 Main Street, which is the Metzger Main Street project. I've detected a lot of support for that in the community with a caveat, and that is people would like to see us find some way so that only people who currently live and work here can move in. In other words, what does the city have to do to make it, local people only to live there, rather than splitting it up to county residents or even beyond? So what would we have to do to make sure this is 100% local resident occupancy? That's what I'd like us to look at. And I support that project. I'm in favor of Pilarcitos Creek fencing after we complete the cleanup. I do favor an encampment ordinance. And the reason is I think we need guardrails around the process. I think public safety and our service provider, nonprofit service providers have some flexibility within that. But if we don't have some guardrails around it, things will take more time. And the reason taking more time is a problem is because the longer, my concern is Pilarcitos Creek. The longer they're in there, the worse the damage and the more expensive it is to clean it up. So I agree, we have, wonderful humans and organizations working on our unsheltered issues, but I don't think it's a good idea for it to be completely personality driven, because someday people move on, we might not have those, wonderful humans working on our behalf, and you need infrastructure and municipal code to help multiply your efforts and to be there in case other things are not working. So I'm in favor of the ordinance. And I'm not including some of the capital projects that are already in progress. I'm just not going to really talk about those. And the LUP implementation is already ongoing. We have a grant for that. I understand we'll be doing a sewer rate study. Another priority for me is our working the stormwater projects relating to Pullman, Roosevelt, and Kehoe. Those are big areas to deal with, but they have to be dealt with. Stormwater is a problem. One of the problems we face with a warming climate is that, based on the science, we're going to have frequent, intense storms. By frequent, I mean frequent within a tiny window in the winter. Maybe for a couple of months, we're going to have a lot of storms, and then we're going to go dry. So we have to be ready, unfortunately, for like the worst case based on the best local available science. And we got to start this work now, continue what we've done in partnership with the neighbors, but it has to be done. And I'm not so much worried about a big stormwater master plan that'll sit on a shelf. I'm more interested in dealing with real projects here. Let's see. So dealing with more revenue-related issues, I'm in favor of the downtown work, and I would include that banner program, wayfinding signs, furnishings on Main Street, and the formula ordinance downtown. As you've heard tonight, we have a structural deficit, remaining structural deficit, and my interpretation of it is staff has done really good work in paring things down to the foundation, but, I would describe the economy as precarious. If we look at everything that's going on in the world with Iran, tariffs, oil blockades, I do a lot of reading. Every morning I get up and I read for 2 hours, many different sources. And a lot of people think we're on the verge of a recession. And it doesn't look like the war is going to end anytime soon, wars. And I think we have to be really careful. And I think we have a staff that's been, conservative in terms of, budgeting, and I think we need to continue that. A part of that is doing the golf feast, so we've got to get out there and talking to OC partners about, getting another agreement. It's going to be a tough road to hoe, but I think we need to prioritize that. I'm not going to prioritize the reorganization study because that's already a priority and we're working on that. Main Street Bridge and ADA and stucco, priority. Carter Park activation, I consider that part of the downtown economic vitality, which I prioritized already. I would like us, well, and I'm hoping that the reorg study will look at this, but I think if we're going to get, and I'm glad we're working on the Measure D stuff. I'm not mentioning that because that's already kind of in play too, but I do appreciate all the work being done to improve Measure D and ADU situation. I think we need to process things faster, process permits faster. What's a process to do that? And what would it take? That doesn't mean that, if he says, well, if you really want to do it fast, you got to have 3 more employees. We don't necessarily want to do that, but we want to find out what's the issue with permitting delays? What's the status? Are there really delays? Are there no delays? What's the delay? And what can be done to deal with it? If we're really into getting, more housing or more economic development, things need permitting, and that's got to be a good process. See. I like the idea of working on a park and rec MOU with Cabrillo, but again, that's been on for 10 or 12 years, and we need to talk about it. I think I covered fire hazard and all that stuff. I don't think I have anything else. Let's see. Oh, I do like the fire pit program. I think that's worth, since we have all the materials, I think we ought to take a look at that. The new park projects that have been recommended, whether it's permanent volleyball, those are all great things. But we have to remember that we have made some verbal commitments, at least, on Smithfield, Dog Park, that sort of thing, and Magnolia Park. The community garden people have been nagging us for a long time, and still it looks like we might not get there because of other priorities. As for the swimming pool, clearly we don't have the financial resources. I need a lot more clarification on what it is they're asking of us in terms of support. I don't think we're in a position to make financing commitments, but what might work for us and them, it's worth a conversation. In terms of a lot of staff activity, I'm not recommending that, but I think enough people seem to want to have that conversation that I'm okay with that. And I think that's it for me. And I would ask, would you like to take a break to consolidate or confer?
Maybe what we could do, I've tried to, as we go through that, and thank you so much for all that feedback and your thoughts today, maybe just very quickly identify the new things that I heard that I think we need to talk about next, and then we can take a break, and that gives you all a minute to think through that. So the new things that, don't show up on the current lists that I heard today, and certainly as I go through it, when we get to the end, please let me know if you feel like I missed something that one of you said that should be categorized this way. The kiosks, now that's been something that's been discussed, but it came up several times here. So I think that is something we want to get a little more clarity on from all of you.
And I think there's probably outside private funding that would help with that.
Right, right. Let's see. We heard from a couple of you about signage, maintenance of signage, and I think what I heard is whatever process we're doing isn't maintaining them quickly enough, and maybe we need to expand that. So I think we need to discuss that briefly. Sewer district consolidation was a new one that came up today. It's been out there and it's been part of conversations, but as has been pointed out, it's showing up a lot in the letters to the editor, different news stories. We heard it again today. I heard it from several of you. So that seems to be one that has really bubbled up. The swimming pool, I think we've heard some consensus there. The formula business ordinance, which is on the list, we heard a lot about that. Again, I want to only hit stuff that's not already on the lists. So give me one moment. Yeah. The idea of signage, and Councilmember Johnson, I have a couple questions for you. So I want to clarify, you mentioned signage at the new CLT parking lots, helping people to know if those are full, they could go to Smith Field and access from the other side. That's what you were saying? Okay. And then you mentioned, it went really quick, ADA fast tracking. It sounded like maybe you meant ADU fast tracking? Oh, ADUs, okay, okay. Again, trying to focus on things that are not already on the list. The parking structure came up a couple of times, the downtown parking structure. We've talked about it, and it'll be part of our downtown parking study session that we want to do in the next couple of months. The internet access redundant loop, which we thought there was a solution for at the state level and has gone away, so that's kind of bubbled back up. The healthcare district that was mentioned by Councilmember Penrose and has been part of discussions with the age-friendly healthcare access group over the last couple of months. Removing angled parking from Heritage Downtown. Now that is part of the Streetscapes Master Plan, but you know, the master plan is just a plan, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done to prioritize what projects need to be moved forward. So that's a little bit outside of the whole master plan, but also could be discussed with the parking study. Talking about our stormwater, I heard two different things. I heard support for a big overarching stormwater master plan, which we've talked about in the past. And then I heard a lot of discussion from several of you about focused on projects around Pullman, Roosevelt, Kehoe, and others, Seymour. So I think we want some clarity on that. Evacuation planning on the list, came up several times. Okay. I think I captured new things there. I was a little across the board. Some of the things are on the list, some are not. But is there anything that any of you shared today that you think is new, is not on any of the lists that we've talked about that were part of this, that we need to highlight for discussion when we come back? Oh,
Did you capture mine?
Yes, sorry. The coast, yeah, let me read it directly. The coastal access routes improvements, I called it either a master plan or a program, as you defined it.
I would call it program.
Yeah, which is trail improvements and roads, kind of consolidating all of that work into one to make us more competitive for grants.
And PG&E, outage issues.
And the South Half Moon Bay power outage issues, which you're correct, there's a reference to the PG&E staging property, but not to the work that we've been, and that really should be on our existing, we've been working on it.
Yeah, okay.
So, yeah.
That's fine.
Thank you. The 940 Main Street project is on the list. They've already submitted a pre-app. We got some additional feedback on that, but I think, you know, that's a have to do, right?
Yeah.
Because if they submit the full application, we have to process it. Anything else from any of you, staff that's been taking notes? Anything, again, that is kind of new today that hadn't been discussed before and didn't show up on our lists?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Nagengas?
I just want to make sure, and I get the new, but that we are the current priority projects is there.
So,
Right?
yeah,
We're
so
still
what
working out, because I know
Yeah.
rent stabilization came up, but to me, we're working on those, right? So
Yeah.
I'm taking this list, we're working it, and I was looking at, I think some of the other council members too, what was potential and or not on the potential list.
Right. So what I was trying to share back just now, and I didn't do a great job of it because I hit some things that are on the list, but make sure that we've captured any new things that are not showing up on the list, and I think that's the next discussion we need to have, is get some consensus about what of the new things should be included on the list for the work plan. And then I think the next step after that is to hear from you when you look at these lists, what are the top 5 things that we need to get some consensus around, and what are some things that are on these lists that maybe just need to be removed? So.
I would, while we take a break, could you put up all the new things on a slide that we
Sure.
can all look at?
Sure. Leslie.
Light doesn't work. There we go. The other thing that I heard was sort of upping our game and how much pressure we're putting on county's Department of Emergency Management for evacuation planning.
And evacuation planning is on the list already.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's the upping our game part that's new.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Okay. All right. We'll work on getting a list together of the new things.
All right, we'll take a 10-minute break. Thank you. A summary of new projects.
Yes. So before you, this slide here is what we'll be working from for this portion of the meeting. This is simply the new projects. You know, it's not everything that I just mentioned, but it's the new projects from that list. And I think what we'd like to do is if we could just take a minute to go through them and see if we can get some consensus on each of these items, whether or not that should be included in the prioritization process going forward. So the first one on the list here is the downtown kiosk concept. Again, it's been something that's been in discussion for a while. We've talked to the chamber about it before, and it's come up in downtown meetings. Is there at least 3 of you that would like this to be something that that staff looks at going forward?
Can you give us some idea of what the expense is going to be for something like this? I'm just talking ballpark figure, because with our financial deficit here and our overworked staff, I'm sure we could get 3 people who would say they want a downtown kiosk, but not at any price.
Right. That's fair. Caveat, the price could certainly be conditioned on how elaborate this kiosk is. What we've heard in the past is some sort of podium or something that has maybe the downtown business map that our downtown association produces each year, and maybe a directory on it that points to people to different locations. That's kind of the simplest version, and that's maybe $20,000, maybe $10,000 to $20,000. There'd be construction involved. It would have to be installed permanently. Up to maybe 50 or 100 if you wanted to have it more digital or other features. So maybe we'll call the middle range $50,000. Is that something that we should explore? And to the mayor's point, there are funding sources out there, outside funding sources out there for something like this.
Yeah, I think we can get the whole thing paid for. Yeah.
How much staff time are we talking about for something like that?
I mean, I think some of the homework has been done. I know that engineering has looked at this with the chamber before. So I'll call this one a moderate amount of staff time. I can't give you numbers, but I would call it a moderate lift.
Well, I think I'm for it. I mean, my feeling is anything we do, there are so many things we have to do to downtown to make it really vital, right? There's a lot of different things that we would like to do that could make everything great. but having a kiosk there I think would benefit the business owners more than anything else.
Yeah, and we hear this a lot from businesses that are outside of like the heart of downtown that worry that people never find their way, to the ends of downtown necessarily. So, do we have a consensus that several of you are supportive of this?
Yeah, I just think it solves a lot of issues. It's the kind of stuff the Coastal Commission loves. It's very tourist focused, like how the heck do you find stuff once you get there? And for people who feel like their signage might not be as great as the awning, I mean, it just tells you, anybody, whether they're local or a tourist, where the heck something is in relation to everything else. And it's just really useful for everybody. So.
And it includes areas outside of that, just what we call Main Street, right? You include Kelly or beyond Koreas or whatever that, right? So
It could, yeah, absolutely. Okay, so Scott and Joe, if you could make this one green, thank you. The next one, I'm just going to tell you, make it green, because we've already heard support for this, which is, exploring consolidation of the sewer and water districts. The swimming pool, the community pool, again, not that we're building it, but that we need to prioritize at least getting more involved and understanding what role the city could play in supporting it. Again, probably a moderate lift right now.
What I've heard from various people, including Ann Morey, who's a big advocate for this, is that all they want is a statement from the city saying that we endorse a new swimming pool, a community swimming pool. And that statement doesn't cost us anything to make. All it is saying it, maybe writing it up on a piece of paper. So rather than getting into long discussions about whether or not a swimming pool is viable, who's going to pay for it, what role does the city play, I don't want to get into all that. I don't want to spend time on that. I'm happy to write, to have an endorsement written. Keep it as simple as that.
So when Ms. Morey was here, she talked mostly about wanting support for the issue of community access. And I think she was talking about not just a new pool, but community access to the improved existing high school pool. So we certainly, support community access, and the lessons and things like that. But we just have to be very careful clarifying what endorse means. It says, and I think we need to clarify, say, this does not, you should not interpret this to mean we're going to fund the pool or the maintenance of a pool. But, we hear you, we support your efforts.
Yeah, how about just a letter of support? A letter of support saying that the city definitely supports community access to pools.
Yeah, I mean, we can leave it up to staff to draft, Marie Jose is very good at that sort of stuff. And let's see what it looks like. And, yeah.
We have a consensus. Go ahead and add that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we could have a sentiment. This is not an endorsement of any financial commitments whatsoever. We could be pretty clear on that. And I think Hillary Hernandez mentioned, she kept using the word MOUs, right? And that's the key, where you define, what does it mean if some city hours, do we have to provide staffing? Do we have to pay? That's where the rubber hits the road, down the road, you know what I mean? But just the initial statement that, sure, we support this. And
yes, we don't want them to wiggle out
Support
the
the
idea that
concept.
we want to, engage on all of our assets, joint use, not just swimming pool MOU. We're talking about joint use of facilities, which
Correct.
in our budget environment makes eminent sense, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe they'd like to have the city take over the event center. Did I say that? Yeah.
They don't. Okay, I think I've got enough clarity there. So this next one, again, I heard from a couple of folks that, we have a sign maintenance program. We replace signs as they go and kind of a limited number. And this one is more kind of looking at expanding that, which that's more of a financial and staff ask there. Certainly something we would explore and come back with solutions on, but is that something we have consensus from the group that
But
we want
let
to?
me ask the question. If you have a regular program made, I can tell you Kelly hasn't been changed out in forever. And those signs are gone, they're faded. I mean,
Todd?
I don't know, I didn't know we had an existing change-out program. And maybe that's what needs to be fine-tuned. That's all I'm asking is that we have a plan on how signs get changed out. I'm not asking to do anything more than what we should be doing.
Todd, do you want to speak to how we manage, signage replacement updates right now?
Of course, thank you, Matthew. And just to clarify what you're talking about on Kelly, you're talking about the relic of a parking program that existed there previously, those signs?
Well, those are there, and I
Those
have
are
no,
there.
and that's not just on Kelly, that.
In the neighborhood too,
In the
yes.
neighborhood
Yes,
too.
yes,
I have
yes.
no idea if that program's still in place, but there's still no parking signs that you can't read too. Or there's other signs that they lean like this. And then you have they're hard to read. So it's just to make sure we have a sign replacement program. I'm not trying to.
So in a perfect world, we would have some sort of database with the replacement schedule for all of that stuff. Obviously, a program like that is costly. We're trying to avoid going to that at this point. We're looking at another potential software program for all of our overarching maintenance needs to include facilities and red curb and everything like that. As far as how we address signs now, currently it's just done as needed. Obviously, we're deficient because of some of the staffing issues that have been discussed previously in this meeting and just lack of bandwidth on the maintenance side due to increases in facilities maintenance and stuff like that. It's all on our list, but we are definitely looking at it, and I've had kind of these discussions with Councilmember Nagengast and briefly with Councilmember Johnson about how we address this. Yes, we have bent poles. Yes, we have signs that are faded. We have one particular street sign location that has been stolen 4 times, and we're not putting it back up because someone in the neighborhood keeps stealing the sign, First and Railroad, if anyone's wondering. But so stuff like that we have to deal with on a daily basis. And we do have a bunch of signs, and we've had those discussions kind of with the maintenance supervisor, trying to see how we can get a program developed in the short term just to start addressing like the low-hanging fruit on that stuff. The Ritz is obviously priority, the faded signs out there on the Ritz. The bent poles along Poplar, the signs along Poplar that don't have any signs on them, period. Like removing stuff as we have time to take care of that stuff, so.
Go ahead, Madam Mayor.
I'm in favor of tools. If we need some sort of a software database, that seems to me to be a sound investment in our processes that help you do your work better and faster and all that sort of thing. So I'm good with that. At a minimum, someone needs to be scheduled, maybe it's once a month or bi-monthly, to go all over town, look at red curbs, look at signs, look at the stop indicators on the street, what needs to be repainted, what needs to be replaced, just general awareness of staff about the condition of our infrastructure would be helpful.
I'm concerned about what Todd said. He said, given staffing, they can't get this kind of thing done. So I'd like to know what that means. Do you think that you can do more with the staff that you've got?
I think yes, probably a little bit more. We are looking at staffing options internally. Obviously, there is the study going on right now, and we're not trying to make any significant structural changes before we get the results of the study. We want that to kind of guide how we move the maintenance side forward. At the end of the day, if we had another body, of course, we could always increase our productivity. But we're being very cautious with that and still trying to realize cost savings and get the budget balanced while waiting for the results of the study to come out.
Yeah, what I'm hearing, I think, and those that mention this, probably we don't need to list this as a council priority. This is part of that work that's happening on the organizational study, and we just need to make sure we highlight this, that there are maintenance issues much like, the permitting issues and other things that we want to have addressed through that study, or at least get recommendations. So if you're comfortable with us not including that on the priority list, not because it's not a priority, but I think it can be captured there, is that, okay?
Are you okay with that, Councilmember Nagengast?
Sounds good. Okay. So we'll mark that red, but Todd and I know that that is part of the work we're going to be doing on that
And
study.
if you need software programs to help, don't be shy to, now, I know there are maintenance programs for that. The tough part is creating the database initially.
Understood. So we've actually engaged 2 vendors already. We did a soft test run last week. We're waiting to get some more of their stuff so the maintenance folks can actually play around with it. The end users need to be comfortable with the product that we're going to be providing them. I guess this is kind of fitting. We're probably going to be bringing something forward in the budget cycle to acquire software and hardware for all of the maintenance staff to be using as well too. So we're working on that behind the scenes, and I just want you to know that we're taking that seriously, and the signs is just one part of it. We're adding, electrified heat pumps at all of our facilities. The library has a maze of ductwork and heat exchangers in there. So it's all the stuff like that that we can add in there. Without getting too much into the weeds, we're doing a lot of deferred maintenance. And that's not good for any of our infrastructure, just kicking the can down the road. So the signs is obviously the most visible part because everyone gets in their cars every day and sees it. But nobody sees the stuff that we're deferring behind locked doors at this facility or at the library. So we're aware and we're trying to address that.
You bring up an important point when you talk about the signs being visible, and that's the things people latch onto. I don't see any problem with the city council, city staff focusing efforts on those things that people interact with every day and find problematic or not. If it's interacting with the public and they're unhappy, if it's an unsafe condition, it's about their daily lives. That's why cities exist, to take care of all those little things that people can't do individually. So, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, and there's a balance there, being responsive to the community, the visible things, but also not allowing those responses to draw us away from things that long-term are going to impact our facilities. So, that's what we have.
Understood.
Todd and Dale.
That's the push and pull and the give and take that we have to deal with. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Next one. This came forward from Councilmember Johnson. He mentioned that he'd like to see us work with CLT on some signage that kind of connects the Wavecrest Smithfield parking lot and the new parking lots that were built by CLT from a signage standpoint, directing people to and from them as the parking lots fill up.
Just say we have to be careful about too many signs. Like the sign program that CLT, I think, originally wanted to do was like pretty much over the top. It just, it impacts the experience. So if you had like one sign saying, parking lot full, go here, that would be fine. Yeah.
Just direct people to Smithfield at the first one. If you did it right at the first stop sign.
Microphone.
If you did it at the first one or the second one, the last one, because you're going to go to the first one, it's full, then you go to the last one, then you go, oh, I can go there. That would work. I saw it. People don't know where to go, and they're asking. They're rolling down the window going, well, where do we go? And I'm like, well, you go over there, and they don't know how to get there.
Speaking of CLT parking lots, another quick question. They're free, right? It's first come, first serve? So there's no gauging of how many hours people get to stay as long as they want. The reason I bring it up, it reminds me of an issue that came up originally when we were, had CLT presenting to us. And a lot of people said, if those lots fill up, a lot of people were always parking illegally, even though there were signs that said, no parking here. So if we're doing any kind of thinking about signage, we might want to think about making sure those old signs are maybe
a lot of new ones out there.
And sheriffs can write tickets for that, right? Great. So that'll hopefully take care of that. Okay.
Great. So I think everybody understands what Councilmember Johnson recommended. I'm just wondering is there support for that to be added to our priorities? We'll figure out how to incorporate that into the work plan. Yeah.
I don't think it's a priority, you know, to our level, what we're talking. I think it's a sign, which makes sense, sign. I mean, but not to do sign clutter.
Got it.
The mayor.
So not necessarily include this on our priorities list, but there's support enough for it. Go ahead, go forth and do. Yeah.
I've never seen the Smith Field parking lot completely parked out, except that there's a game going.
Right.
You know, some days, many days.
Maggie's laughing because she circles that parking lot, I'm sure, a lot with her
Okay.
kids.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe if we could just put this one like in blue, and we know that it's not going to go on the priority list, but it's something that council has now given consensus direction for staff to pursue. So this item, you know, as we know, affordable housing's been on our priorities for a long time. We've made some great efforts and strides on some of these projects and other programs. What Vice Mayor Penrose shared, and please correct me if I need to refine this better, but is continue that focus on affordable housing, but make sure we're broadening it, that we're looking at affordable housing that supports all income levels, or not all income levels, but all the levels of need, not just, you know, our lowest income individuals, but teachers and you mentioned, you know, people who grew up here and are being priced out of their hometown, and service workers. You know, we heard from somebody that, you know, they're not a farm worker, so they can't stay at Stone Pine Cove. What other options are out there for other income levels? Is that
Yeah,
fair?
specifically extremely low, and middle income. Those are the three categories I'm talking about. And I think a lot of the teachers and a lot of the service workers and our essential workers fall into one of those three categories. I think, I don't know if we have somebody on staff who looks at what's being done in the rest of the country. There's so many creative things being done, and they're being done on without federal money, you know. And so I don't know enough about it, but I do know that it's being done, and it's being done in a way that people are trying to think in terms of communities, villages, where you have people of different incomes living together in the same place. So there's less segregation, there's less ghettoization, and cities end up looking better. Yeah, it's really what I'm talking about.
I think you're also a little bit alluding to social housing, which isn't just the middle, low, and very low. It's like market rate too, and the market rate helps pay for the low income, so that, you know, people, like you said, people aren't segregated by income or work class. You know, they're living together. Yeah.
So I'm adding the term integrated into this, that it's not necessarily specific projects, but you're integrating the different income levels with market rate housing instead of pockets. Is that?
I mean, you can get them all in one building.
Or you do one project which includes all the income levels.
Right, right.
You know, but I know that it's being done elsewhere, and I think it's an idea that we could use in our small town.
I would agree. If we're going to prioritize affordable housing, I'd say prioritize social housing that, you know, covers everybody who might need it. And then, you know, using market rate to help offset some of those costs. You know, rather than have, this is going to be teacher housing, this is farmer housing, you know, the very low people, you live here. I don't like that either. I agree with you.
Madam Mayor? Sorry.
Oh, just a quick question. Isn't 940 Main Street multiple income? Isn't that the plan for Mid-Penn?
Leslie, I think it's time for you to jump in here, and maybe you can also share what we already have in the housing element around this and some of the things we're already doing.
Yeah, 940 Main is primarily low-income housing. And I'll just say, too, that too. Low-income housing often comes with loans, which make it easier to develop. In our housing element, though, we do have specific, within our RENA, we do have specific numbers that we have to reach for very low income, and moderate income. And I would look to the Creekside development as maybe an example of what you're talking about, Deborah, for mixed income levels, because they have low-income units, which were required, and then moderate income units. It's a smaller development, but it might be an example of what you're talking about.
For those that are watching, Creekside is the development just to the north of the community center, which is a mixture of single-family homes and then 4 affordable units.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would try to get Mid-Penn to open it up, not just to low income, but, I mean, like I said, including market rate helps perform the same function as loans, for instance, right? So, I think we just should try to mix it up a little bit.
And as we're meeting with developers and getting proposals, that we're encouraging that approach, right? Okay. I think there's more work to be done on this if this is something we want to include on the priorities work plan, but do we have general support to include this item? Yep, great. Let's make this one green. Councilmember Johnson, again, just want to clarify, you mentioned ADU fast tracking, and I'm not sure if this needs to be on this list, but we're looking for clarification, Councilmember Johnson, the ADU fast tracking item. Is that just referencing the work that is going into our administrative changes to Measure D? Is it something else? Can you just speak more on what you're thinking here?
I went to Pacifica, and there was, I think Madam Mayor was there, and they were talking about ADUs and they were pre-fatted, and basically, the Sonoma, the whatever, and the whatever, and they were pre-approved at the city level. Then I talked to Tim Pond about this on Friday, and he goes, that doesn't work because you've got riparian, you've got this or whatever. Anything that we can do to get that ADUs to process quicker, to think outside the box a little bit. If you know this, there's 1 or 2 or 3 units, it's A, B, or C, and we know it's in an area that doesn't have a riparian or doesn't have setback issues, then try to fast track it, and have that already pre-approved. And Tim Pond's pretty much the expert on this, but he said it wouldn't work, but I'd like to see if it could work in any way that we can to process quicker, is what I'd like to see. And that's something that you hear it all the time. It's just taking too long to do the ADUs.
So it sounds like, and again, happy to let you jump in, what you're looking for is staff to review policies and procedures around ADUs and look for ways to improve that to expedite production.
Like an example, on solar panels, at one point, didn't we have to go through the whole process, and now we have a fast track system for it? Is that correct?
I don't know what we had before I got here, but our system now is pretty fast track, yeah.
I'd say is before it was pretty intense, and then there was a lot of things you had to do. It took a lot of time. Now we have a fast track system, and it was great. It worked for me. I put solar up, but we don't have that for ADUs. It's still this long, drawn-out process.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I will also say that there have been several recent state laws passed that do require exactly the kinds of streamlining that you're talking about, and we are not currently in compliance with those. Many cities are not yet because they're still new enough, but that is part of our implementation plan update, is to look at streamlining those reviews. And even in doing that, we are somewhat constrained by the requirements of the Coastal Act to issue a coastal development permit for an ADU rather than just a straight ministerial permit. So the state is working with the Coastal Commission on possibly creating a ministerial CDP, but that's a little further out. But what's under our control now is the update to the implementation plan, and I think we can address a lot of that there.
So I guess just looking to council for direction on this, does it sound like we're already doing enough, or do you think we need to add additional? Okay. Okay. Yeah, put this in red, but we've also heard, the purpose behind it, and that's already in the works, and we'll continue to work on these things. The downtown parking structure, it's been discussed in the past. It's not really on any of our lists. Is this something that you want staff to prioritize in the coming fiscal year? And obviously not building one, because that's down the road, but more exploration and planning around this.
I think the key thing is identifying a location. So maybe a location study that, locations that might accommodate structures. I understand there's people willing to help fund a garage, but they need to know that there's land available. So what's the land inventory suitable for a public parking garage? And it might be land that other public agencies own, like school district or something.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I'm Dale Lita, interim city engineer. I would just ask for a little clarification on that. So my understanding would be to look at the number of spaces downtown that we've lost as part of the red curb laws that went into effect. I think we lost something like 50 stalls with those laws, as well as looking at implementation of the downtown streetscape plan. That would give us a stall count to shoot for, which would roughly give us an idea for sizing and shape for a structure. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I think you might have to accommodate, there's going to be housing projects in the downtown area that, might not have sufficient parking, and they may need to park at a public lot, and there may be sections of the lot where those people can park, but.
Yeah, so as part of that study, we would also look at kind of planned and anticipated development downtown and anticipated increase in parking demand.
Yeah, so that would be an analysis, I think, that all we need to do now is, rather than go out and shop around for a funder, just put your thinking on paper about what it would look like,
Yeah, we also have a lot of parking issues on South Main Street.
Yeah.
That's a real problem area, so.
Are you referencing kind of the area around where the proposed Hyatt would go and Main Street Apartments? And
Yes,
those
I mean,
businesses
just
there?
as is, it's overparked, but we're with a Hyatt and.
So I think what I would suggest here is, we were already planning to bring forward a study session or a workshop on downtown parking. And I would say what the direction I'm taking is, as part of that, let's put a little more emphasis on what a structure could look like in relation to that. Is that?
Including in that and not including it on the list.
Yeah. I think it's a broader look at downtown parking. And then after that study, then, the study session or work session, we'll get further direction from you about what that looks like going forward.
Sounds good.
Yeah. And I think that probably then I'm just going to lump in the removing the angled parking downtown. That's all part of that same calculus, Dale. Is that fair? So maybe we'll just take the two of those as, or maybe we just simply consolidate it into, something we're already planning, but maybe elevate it a little bit, is just looking at downtown parking, studying parking needs and solutions. Maybe call that a priority?
Yeah, I even think that the downtown streetscape plan actually calls for removal of angled parking.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. That's already there.
Right.
Yep. Okay.
But aren't we, whether it's interim until that happens, that could be a long ways away.
Right.
But isn't there interest in looking at, if we do have, because angled parking allows you to have more parking, is to look at, not saying we would do this, but look at maybe the size of vehicles allowed to park downtown. So I don't know
Absolutely.
if that's part of the study.
Yeah, and that's, on the list, it talks about parking ordinance downtown.
Yes.
And really, it's compact parking, it's the closing the sides of the street for street sweeping. So it seems like this is all lumped into that. So what I would recommend is we delete these two from this list and instead put one that kind of elevates looking, studying downtown parking issues and solutions, and make that a priority.
Yeah.
We have support for that?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay, great. So if we could do that, folks, on this list. Next item, internet access redundant loop. So this is going back to the problem we have here on the coast, that our fiber optic connections that provide high-speed internet access that also then connect to our cellular connections here on the coast, both come from different parts of the south end of town, move their way north on the coast, and end. And so any break in those systems takes out everything downstream from them. And the solution is a redundant loop. Basically, we need similar redundant connections coming from the north, presumably through the Devil's Slide Tunnel and down Highway 1. The state of California had programmed this into their middle mile initiative work a couple of years ago. It was removed. Supervisor Mueller went nuclear on them. They added it back on and then updated their plan and removed it again. So the question I think here is this something you want staff to prioritize? This is probably more of an advocacy and seeking solutions than we're not going to solve this issue ourselves.
Support the county in their efforts.
Yeah. Is that okay? Let's make that one green. Okay, the healthcare district. So as I shared, we have a healthcare access committee that's part of the age-friendly efforts here on the coast. Been meeting for many, many years on a variety of issues. Really recently have honed in on pursuing the concept of potentially pursuing a healthcare district here on the coast, similar to what exists in other communities, that would become a funding mechanism and possibly a management mechanism for increased healthcare access on the coast, primarily focused on urgent care. So developing a separate government district with a separate elected board that would serve the entire coast and would have the power to tax or to raise funds, and then potentially would either fund, say, if Seton Coastside were to ever open and the space that they've offered for urgent care were to be occupied, but maybe there's funding gaps, a healthcare access district could help raise funds for that from the coast side. Or in an extreme case, they could become a body that develops and manages healthcare on the coast, an urgent care clinic on the coast. That's already something that's being discussed in the community. The question is, at what level do you want staff to, we're going to be in the conversations. We can't remove ourselves from the conversations. How much do we want staff in the city to be at the front of that effort, I think is probably the question. Is that fair, Councilmember Penrose? Yes. Yeah.
Can you play it by ear? I mean, as the community is having discussions and you reach a point where you need more information or something? And you...
I would call that not prioritizing it and really keeping the status quo.
Can you provide us updates then? I mean...
Absolutely. Yeah, so maybe there's a softer prioritization that it's something the council's interested in following and learning more. Right now, staff and Councilmember Penrose participate in these groups, but more feedback loop to the council to make decisions on later. Is that?
Monitoring priority.
Yeah, there you go.
I think ultimately we're going to end up going that route, like with the life services district, like they use in Sonoma, Mendocino, and Del Norte counties. You have to tax yourself, but you get
Okay, I feel like there's a little consensus. Not that we're the lead agency or we're going to press this initiative forward, but you want it elevated to something that council gets information on and feedback on and we continue to be engaged in.
Yeah, knowing that we may very well get there.
Yeah. Green with an asterisk. Perfect. Okay, the mayor recommended, and I believe this is planning, but it's really bringing together work we're already doing into a more cohesive plan to make us more competitive for funding. This is the Coastal Access Routes Program, so looking at all of our roads, we've heard from, there's pieces of this we've heard from all of you, but looking at all of our roads and trails that provide that coastal access, consolidating that into some kind of a plan. There's probably a grant there that would actually help fund that work, and developing this program so that we can then pursue funding more competitively to repair and improve these pathways.
We might be able to get funding, a small amount of funding for a plan. And I forgot to mention, we should probably include Miramontes Point Road in that. Coastal Trail, and even, we could put in the Pilarcitos Creek Trail expansion that somebody talked about, I think maybe Rick Hernandez. But I think by having that plan, when we go for funding and people say, well, is it part of a plan? Instead of just saying it's part of there's a bunch of projects included in our capital improvements program, we say, well, we have this coastal access program. It makes it look like we're serious about maintaining this, coastal access infrastructure, makes the commission happy, makes Coastal Conservancy happy, attracts money. People like to give money to programs, They like to put it into buckets.
Yeah.
So I see this as creating a bucket.
Yeah. I've asked Dale to step up again. He's obviously very involved in all of these projects. So I'm just interested in his thoughts on what's being proposed here. And
so just from a clarification standpoint, so this would be a fund that we would be allocating programming funds to every year to I guess just to generally look at specific areas for improvement within.
Be like a subset of the capital improvements program. So you would still have those items that are in the capital improvements program, but it would call it out as a specific program because it's important to us, that coastal access is important to us. We want to make sure we're covering it and that we're prepping ourselves effectively for grant funding. So I'm not asking you to put money into it every year. We may want to. As we look at the inventory of the coastal trail and say, holes, eroding, we're going to put money into the coastal access program for this particular project. So it's more like a program that's a subset of the CIP.
So we have a number of CIP projects already, I guess, which address, I think, a lot of the issues that would be, you would presumably put into that. So I guess we would just organize this as a category within our CIP that we would.
You would bundle the projects that fit the coastal access roads, the coastal trail segments, and maybe there's Pilarcitos Creek Trail now, along that area of Tom and Pete's. And we have an access easement in Stone Pine Cove. And eventually, we'll want to continue it past Oak Creek Park, out to the coastal trail. There is Coastal Conservancy has a vertical access program. They not only want to build coastal trail, they want to build trails to the coastal trail. So, and I think it's advisable to throw roads into that too, because why not? They're coastal access routes. They're governed by state law. We have to manage them for coastal access under the Coastal Act. Create a program, that calls attention to that, gives us credit for that, and opens us up to outside funding.
But not include the East Side Parallel Trail, for instance.
No, because that's different.
It's not vertical access, but it's
Right.
it's the same as the coastal trail in terms of getting up and down the
It's basically along
coast.
Highway 1, though. And that's great. We want those trails, too. I'm not saying don't fund those trails. I'm just saying the coastal access program would be the roads and the trails, horizontal and vertical, that link up with the coastal trail.
Could we just put those 4 roads in the trail in and just, these are our coastal access roads and trails? And, I'm trying to understand the program itself. Can we just call it our coastal access program that consists of these roads and the trail? And then we address capital projects there separately, when we do paving projects or trail rehab projects or.
Isn't that what I'm saying?
Well, I'm trying to make sure that's what you're saying, not, you know, I'm trying to see, are we I'm trying not to create more work for Dale.
It's just a matter of, you know, cut and paste.
No, it's just, I think what I'm hearing, it's just putting them, yeah, just naming those.
You're branding those projects. So you can talk about your brand. You know, I worked for the state and I would look at our budget, the Coastal Conservancy's budget. Okay, Coastal Conservancy's Coastal Access Program, Coastal Conservancy's Climate Ready Program, Coastal Conservancy's Explore the Coast Program. You know, and legislators were always trying to put money into our programs because they were programs. I gave money to the Explore the Coast program to bring people from disadvantaged communities to the coast. You know, people like programs. All I'm saying is create the program.
So I think what I'm hearing is a moderate lift because we're not talking about new projects, but there is some work to be done to bundle these, figure out how they are reflected in our budget, how they're going to be reflected on our website and those types of things. So there is work there for staff for sure, but we're not talking about new projects on their own. We take what we're already working on, consolidate them, and then as we add new projects, they can be captured under this.
Yeah, you know, and at some point you might want money, funding, outside funding, to do an inventory on all the work needed on the coastal trail in the city limits. Or, you know, so you might add projects, you might add money, you might not, but you have a program there. Oh, like I'm kind of repeating myself now. You have a program that is a very useful tool for monitoring a program that's required by our LCP, LUP, basically.
Yeah, okay. So I think for this priority, what I would be asking for is consensus that it's a moderate lift. This isn't this big new thing that we're doing. We take what we're doing and we spend a little bit of time consolidating and branding. And is there consensus around that?
I just had a question about the road piece of that. So any road that provides access is a road that provides traffic both directions, right? So I'm also thinking when we're talking about emergency planning, right? Access and egress the heck out of here. Other grants could be added into that under a different heading of, you know, emergency type.
Yeah, you might have tsunami signage, or this might be an emergency access route in an evacuation program. Yeah, so I mean, it's a way to also bring in other funding sources. Yeah. Right.
Okay. Do we have support then to include this at a moderate level? Yeah, seems like it. Great. Okay, the last item on this list, and we are running out of time today, so we'll want to cover this, and then I'll kind of wrap things up for today. And you'll see the or on this, because we've heard kind of two different approaches, and we've gone back and forth on this over the years, is do we want to focus our energy when it comes to stormwater and these water courses on a broad master plan for the entire community, or do we want to focus our energies right now on focus studies and projects on the Kehoe, Pullman, Roosevelt, and Seymour water courses? And then depending on the direction we get here, we can kind of lay that out in the work plan.
I had another thought about this. When we're talking about consolidating our sewer and water system, and we're talking about recycled water, an overall stormwater plan might be able to be part of that. So we take the stormwater and we recycle it. And we can only do that if we've got an overall plan. We can't do it if we're attacking Kehoe with one plan and Pullman with another. And that's one of the other reasons for having an overall plan. I don't know what the cost of that is. I imagine it's quite high. That would be my guess. But I don't think the problem's going to go away. I think it's going to get worse. And I think we're wasting water every year And we're going to be wasting more every year as we get more and more big storms. So I am in favor of an overall plan, even though I know it's costly. I think it comes to the table as a real priority.
I see your point. My thinking is, and I'm glad you brought up water and sewer consolidation in that conversation. I mean, we might want to hold off on a master plan until we know how the consolidation might play out, because the stormwater might have to be diverted into facilities owned by other people or by another agency. They might re-engineer parts of the system. So I'm not saying don't do an overall plan, but I'm just wondering about its integration with consolidation. The other thing is, I think we want to harness the energy that we have already going on Kehoe, Pullman, and et cetera, for projects. So I don't say don't do a plan, but I think we have to do those projects too, given our relationship with the neighbors and what's been going on and things. So I don't think we can abandon the projects either.
Parameters change if we had an overall plan. So if we're talking about diverting the water from Pullman, for instance, and where are we going to put that water? And if we had an overall plan, maybe where we put it would change things.
My feeling is we have to first do no harm, and there's active harm going on in a couple of, like 2 or 3 of these watersheds here. So I'd be reluctant to put off doing anything there until we had a plan. I'd like to hear from Councilmember Nagengast, who's a civil engineer, see if he has input on this.
Engineers always have input. But so, and I hear what Vice Mayor Penrose is saying, and I see value in that. However, watersheds have been identified, and if we do recycling, that's going to be typically, I can't say for everything, but you stay within your watershed. So you wouldn't take like Kehoe watershed and send it to Pullman necessarily. You would, you identify whether it's, I've heard different talks. Somebody wants to build pipes to the ocean to take the water, or do we look at upstream and retaining it, retention basins? And to me, that's part of your analysis of each of these watersheds. Do we, we heard pipes, but that's not necessarily the solution, But I think that's how you address Pullman. What are our answers? Because we've talked about the ability, there might be some grant funding, public-private perhaps, or I think conservancy even maybe. If basins may be ideally to have upstream instead of building a big pipe somewhere. And I agree, you shouldn't just, and we were just talking about in the hallway, engineers, we were so focused on getting rid of the problem. Oh, let's get rid of it. Now it's like, no, let's keep it. We used to line every ditch with concrete just so we could get it away from everybody. Now no, that's not such a good idea. So I think our thinking has changed. That's why I think we can concentrate on each watershed, because we've identified, 3 or 4 of them already in town, and look at that as a potential project, which you could have retention, whether you had a recycled component as part of the sewer and water, recycled water, but you're going to do groundwater retention can be totally separate from what recycled water could be. So we could do this, separately. We don't need a master plan to address how water, or to keep water from going to the ocean if we can, do a retention basin. So I just want to, what I worry about a big master plan, the cost, and then it takes a time. And there is some urgency, I think, on us right now, just because we know 2 for sure, that Pullman and Kehoe, and I think we need to look at those now. I mean, to me, that would be my recommendation. And
But
I
if-
think we could look at how to retain that water, not just let it run to the ocean.
So, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, that's great. The idea is retention. But retention, having water sitting in a basin, is that basin going to be the kind of basin that will allow for recycling the water? I don't know enough about the engineering and the equipment and all that to know, but you got water sitting there in a basin. Can that be then used?
Typically, and I'll let the city engineer, come in there, but
Yeah.
typically retention basins allow the groundwater recharge at that point. You're recharging right there.
But I don't know that we need to recharge our aquifers. Maybe we do, but I don't know that we need to do that. That's one option. That you can, one way to use recycled water, but it's not necessarily the correct one in every instance, so.
But
Dale?
Yeah, if I may. Currently, because we have development and we cover a lot of the natural ground with hardscape and buildings, all that ground coverage inhibits water's travel under the ground. Today, with the development that we get, and also the changing in the storm patterns we get, when you have a high-intensity storm or one after another high-intensity storms, a lot less of that water gets into the ground than what you would get over smaller storms stretched out over a longer period of time. So just with climate change and development, we do in fact have a deficit in water in our aquifers, and that's going down every year. So it is a concern both locally and regionally. To Councilmember Naganga's point, capturing water and finding opportunities to I guess restore our watersheds and allow that water to get back down into the ground. It's a significant benefit.
It also you can use detained water for habitat purposes. You can let it slowly flow out, like into an area that's undergoing wetland restoration or other sort of habitat restoration, and use that water to support that sort of restoration kind of a thing. It may be that gray water systems could tie into it, I'm not sure, but.
What about issues with where we place these basins? I mean,
That's an important
That's
question.
going to be a very big issue.
You're right. Yep. Right.
I would just add, as far as like the distinguishing between, I guess, focused projects and the stormwater master plan. So a master plan does have a lot of benefit. There's a lot of long-term benefit there. It helps us, understand our system better and help us prioritize kind of long-term implementation of projects. Another thing it does is it sets us up better for grant funding for projects. If those are on a master plan and we're going to pursue grants, it helps us a lot. It also helps to plan for future development. So we can do things like establish floodways or file map amendments with FEMA to better inform future development. A lot of the challenges we've had with past development have been because our FEMA flood maps are so outdated. They haven't done any modeling here since the 80s.
Then I would do both, a master plan and solve the Kehoe, Seymour, and Pullman problems.
So yeah, the local problems, obviously that's a more urgent need. And even with grant funding, there's a long time scale associated with that. So I think the solution from my perspective is that you really do need to approach both.
Maybe we could look at our short-term projects like Kehoe and Pullman and determine exactly which of those need to be dealt with now. Maybe Roosevelt is not as critical right now. So we don't have to be talking about all of our ditches. We could be talking about 2 specific projects and a master plan.
Well, and I think those are already on the list, right? So maybe we don't even talk about those. They're on the list. We got to do them. People are suffering. We've made commitments to neighbors. The new project is an updated watershed management plan?
Dale, I mean, what kind of an effort is that? Obviously, there's specialized consultants we would have to bring in for something like that. I mean, is this a $1 million master plan project? Is it like any sense of how big this is and the time horizon for something like that?
I've given this a lot of thought. It really is dependent on how much. So to answer your question first, I would budget for an initial plan roughly around, let's say $250,000. That would be a good start for our plan. Part of the approach is really going to be dependent on how we want to. What do we want to do with the information we get from a stormwater master plan? Now we can pay a consultant to go and do modeling and give us a list of projects. Another option would be to craft it in a way that staff would have some control over the data and the model. So if we use software that we're comfortable with, which there's a lot of different things out there, then that helps us. We have a better ability to kind of run scenarios of what different improvements would look like and kind of just take ownership for it. And that's kind of the way I've envisioned it, at least because I like to have control over those things. And it's easier to have something in-house that you're familiar with than hiring a consultant and having to continuously bring them back to make updates every time you implement a project.
Well, it depends on your level of effort and what else you have going on. What's your work plan? You know, if you're already overwhelmed, like with getting ready to do Highway 1 North, you know, maybe you don't want to do in-house work on a master plan. I will say this, though. I think it should be done with an RFQ, and we need to see new consultants, not the same old reliable workhorses. We need to see consultants who are up to date on, you know, the green practices. We don't want just somebody else to come in and say culvert everything, pave it over. We want somebody who's new age engineering company. And we have a lot of local talent who understand this stuff, like James Benjamin, who is sitting right there, who knows a lot of people, So that would be one caveat, is just, you know, let's not just use the same old.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is develop a work plan around creating a broader stormwater master plan or you know, watershed management plan, something along those lines, and focus some projects, you know, that we've been working on, which are really Pullman and Kehoe right now are the ones we've been focused on.
Yeah, and there may be other capital projects that we can have sit back while we do this. I don't know, but that's for the work plan discussion, I think. But
Okay. We have.
But so it's Pullman and Kehoe, right?
I mean,
which I'm comfortable with, and we know those.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because Seymour and Roosevelt were in there, but I agree, Pullman and Kehoe we've identified.
We have more acute issues with those two right now. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, the bells are ringing. It's 5 o'clock. We don't have to stop if you guys want to keep going. But here's my thought: is in my note taking as you guys were speaking and other staff have been taking notes, I think we did get a pretty good sense of from attachments 3 and 4 where your priorities lie. And I think based on that and the discussion we just had, staff is in a position where we can put together a draft work plan and bring it back for you to respond to. And we want to do that pretty quickly because it will inform the budget. So if you're comfortable that you've been heard and you feel like we've captured things correctly thus far, we'll take that and move it into developing that work plan and bring it back to you, which that is our normal process. Little different because historically we've voted on like priority areas, and I'm not sure that's what we're doing right now. I think we're more focused on projects and we'll categorize them into priority areas, but that's based on the feedback we've already gotten from you. So if that's all right, that's how we'll move forward. And I think today's been a really great session. Great. I think we had more people at this priority setting session from the public than we've ever had before, which I think is promising, interest in the work that we're doing. Staff, thank you so much for all the work that went into this. as you can imagine, with 3 council meetings in 5 days, it's been a whirlwind week, and staff are exhausted, and I know council's exhausted from reviewing all the materials, but I think it was well worth it, and we had a productive session today, and we're ready to move forward. So
Thanks to all of you for hanging in there. Really appreciate it.
thank you.
For staff.
All right. Call it adjourned? All right.